Hello, this is Jay with Guilty of Crime, and I hope everybody can hear me today. Hey, Sadie's mama, always here. Thank you. Can you let me know if you can hear me today? Um, so I'm assuming you can because I don't have anybody sending me messages letting me know they can't. What we're talking about today are the guilty on all murder charges, Adam Montgomery. Now, we all know he was found guilty on all charges. He admitted to guilt on two. He didn't show up for his trial at all. And then after that, he was sentenced to guilty on all charges. Murder was the biggest charge, and he didn't show up for that. So we're going to talk about what's next, what happened in the court, things that we may have missed, press conference after, prosecutor talking about what he went through and what's going through his mind. And then after we get to that, if anybody wants to stay on here, it's a Saturday, 2:00 Pacific Standard Time. So if anyone wants to stay on, I want to go over the closing arguments by the defense. As you know, they played it first, and the prosecution. Now, I know a lot of people were working and they caught clips, and everybody caught the verdict. So everyone knows the verdict, and everyone probably thinks, well, what more is there? There's a lot more. And I probably should have put that in my title. However, where is Harmony Montgomery? We have justice for Harmony, but we don't know where her body is. So we want to talk about that. Hopefully at some point somebody will find her. It usually seems to be a hitchhiker or somebody that's out on the side hiking. Maybe not a hitchhiker, but somebody hiking or a fisherman or something. They always find something, and I'm not sure that that's going to be the case, because we've heard. Well, the people that have watched this have heard that the body was moved so many times, and for 4 months it was just moved around. So yes, we do need to pray that we can bring her home. Although there's justice, the family didn't get to bring her home and have a proper burial. So let's get into that and talk about that. I want to play the verdict. I have a shorter clip and I have a little longer clip because I want you to listen to a little bit of the behind the scenes and what they say about sentencing. And then I want you to understand, just because they said that about Adam Montgomery being at sentencing, it doesn't mean that he's going to be there. And I'll show you why. So, yes, never give up hope, Gannon Stauch. Absolutely. We never thought we were going to find him, and just, by a miracle up above, whatever you want to call it, that was crazy that we found him that many miles away. And he was in that hot weather, still semi-preserved, where they can see what happened to him. That was a horrible case. And kids' cases touch my heart deeply, yet I still cover them because they make me angry. They make me so angry at these people. Later on, I might play a clip. There's a new one that came out about parents that kill, and it's 3 of the cases that I've covered. And it's a clip from Court TV or Vinnie Politan. So yeah, let's see the guilty verdict and see what they talk about after they release the jury. If you didn't get to see that and you only saw the little quick 2-minute clip, I want to show you a little bit more. So let's see. Let me find that one, and let me find that one, and we'll go from there. That was a good one. Let's see. So I've got a lot of files here, and I do have the let's pull this one up and hope this is the one that I need. It may not be, but we'll talk about it after. So 1 second. All right, let's just watch the verdict, and then I'll tell you about it if they don't say it.
foreperson, it's the court's understanding that the jury has reached a verdict in this matter.
That's correct.
As to charge ID 193-7947C, charging the defendant, Adam Montgomery, with the crime of second-degree assault, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You say that he's guilty, Mr. Foreperson?
That is correct.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes.
As to charge ID 202-7112C, charging the defendant, Adam Montgomery, with the crime of second-degree murder, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You say that he's guilty, Mr. Foreperson?
That's correct.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes.
And as to charge ID 202-7113C, charging the defendant with the crime of falsifying physical evidence, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You say that he's guilty, Mr. Foreperson?
That's correct.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes.
And on charge ID 202-7114C, charging the defendant, Adam Montgomery, with the crime of abuse of corpse, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You say that he's guilty, Mr. Foreperson.
That's correct.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes.
And on charge ID 202-7115C, charging the defendant, Adam Montgomery, with the crime of tampering with witnesses and informants, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You say that he's guilty, Mr. Foreperson.
That's correct.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for your service. You've performed.
Okay, so here's the part I wanted to play. So we all were very excited yesterday that there was justice for Harmony. I saw lots of people saying, "Oh, that wasn't a surprise. It was due. They just needed to do all the technicalities of court. He didn't show up." But you know what? It took a little over 7 hours, and it could have gone either way. There could have been one person in that jury that said, "Well, he wasn't here because whatever, and maybe this and maybe that, and maybe Kayla's the one that did it." So really, it is justice for Harmony, but what's next? But what's next on finding her? What's next on sentencing? Is he going to just be wiped out into some, there's no death penalty, but how many years is he going to get? And hopefully he has a miserable existence. So now he didn't come to court any of the days. He professed his innocence at the weapons trial, and that was about it. We haven't heard from him, right? So yeah, this guy's, a POS, and we're going to listen to this next part. Listen closely what they're talking about with the sentencing. I wish they would have made him go to the trial any of the days. But you know what? I think it did hurt him, even though the judge asked for the jury not to let it affect the verdict or any part of it.
An important civic duty, and that is as to the alternates as well as all the deliberating jurors. What we're going to do now is I'm going to send you back into the deliberation room. The alternates are going to be able to go back now with you. You can discuss the case with each other. So it's an opportunity for you to do that. I'm going to take a few minutes with the lawyers here, and then I will come in to discuss a couple of other matters with you further, and then you'll be released from your service. All right. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. All rise for the jurors, please.
All right, there you go. Guilty on all counts. Adam Montgomery not there to witness it.
I'm stopping it real quick, Sadie's mama, because you say he has to be there for sentencing. That's not necessarily true. That's why I'm playing this right now, because I want you to see what they say about that. He can get out of it. There's a way he can get out of it. It's not caught. It's not in concrete. It's not cast in concrete right now. And I'm not going to spoil it. Just let's listen to this, and then we'll talk about the next video and why it's not cast in concrete yet.
But Crystal Sorey was there, Harmony's mother. Packed courtroom. You see Matt Johnson's there. This is the way the system works, and boy, it did work. And Julie, we were talking. Both sets of attorneys were fantastic in this case. The prosecution Their closing was just off the charts, how impactful it was, but also the defense. I mean, the defense was given a very difficult set of cards, and
And
that-
their job
Ladies
is
and
what
gentlemen, you
hangs
may you may be
everything in the
seated.
balance. Let's listen to the judge.
Counsel, we just need to schedule sentencing. I don't know how much time the parties feel that they need.
We'll say we are scheduled here on Thursday, the 2nd of March. So just
Will both sides be prepared? Actually, I don't know what the court may not have sufficient time that day. So let me just look. No, I'm actually going to be in trial that day. I have a docket in the morning, but I'm in trial after. It may be that maybe we could just get some time frame. Let me look to the state first about how long do you need to be prepared? And I'll have,
We may need to at least go a little bit of time beyond that. I would say, sorry, I'm just looking at my calendar as well.
better not to give me a date. Just tell me about how far out and about how much time you think you'll need.
I think, Your Honor, we're going to need roughly 4 weeks, so somewhere around the last week of March, first week of April.
So sometime after April 1st. I know I'm going into a lengthy trial in April, so we'll see what we can do. About how long a hearing do you feel that you'll need?
Based upon my best estimate, Your Honor, is probably at least half the day, so at least a solid 3 hours. Would be the safest time period to go. If we use less of it, we use less.
Okay, just knowing what the court's docket is, and then I know I have a 3-week trial also in April. It may not be possible to get it in that month, but we'll do it as quickly thereafter as we can, as long as that's sufficient for the defense.
putting us into May. Certainly plenty of time.
Okay, if there are other constraints, please let the court know. Otherwise, we'll schedule it as the docket permits in sometime after April 1st. Is that okay with you?
Yes.
Okay.
We have jury trials to work around, but small.
Okay. All right, I'm not inclined. I know the parties are preparing sentencing memos. I'm not inclined for a PSI unless somebody feels that one would be needed. No, okay, very good. Sentencing memos, any sentencing memos should be in, I would say, given the time frame, if you can sentencing memos in 10 days in advance, that would be helpful to the court. That will give time for the court to consider any information, ample time to consider any information the court needs to consider. Anything else we need to accomplish today?
I think, Your Honor, just from the state's perspective, when we do have the sentencing date, we're getting closer. The state will ask under RSA 651:4- if the defendant, whether he likes it or not, will have to be transported here for the sentencing pursuant to that statutory authority.
Okay. If you're going to file something, did you say?
File that, Your Honor.
Okay.
There's very clear statute on it, there's case law on it. We will provide that to the court ahead of time and do that in plenty of time so that the defense can respond to that before we get anywhere near that 10-day mark ahead of the hearing.
Okay. Anything else the defense wants to raise?
Not at this time, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right, so I played that because it's May 9th. They go back and forth. I don't think right then and there they set a date. And on a couple of news stations, they say different dates. So I think it was premature. They weren't sure. But for everybody knows now it's going to be May 9th. And yes, you're right, Sadie's mama. They still have to put their paperwork into the judge to ask her to make him come. But we're speculating here. There's many possibilities that he might be able to get out of it. He was hell-bent on not coming here, whether it was to save face, to not have to hear it, just to spite the jury. So who knows what's going to happen, and if his side's going to file that he not be there because maybe he got hurt, maybe he whatever. So we'll see. Let's listen to this real quick. And they talk about that. It's still not a done deal, which sucks. That's my professional opinion. It sucks. Doesn't want to be strip search, whatever. Maybe he didn't, he doesn't get his sushi that day for lunch. He wants sushi if they bring him. Who knows? This guy.
That we just learned Adam Montgomery will be sentenced in April. We have also learned that the prosecution will file a request to have Montgomery present inside the courtroom for that sentencing. As we know, he has not been here for the entirety of his trial. He did show up for jury selection, but that was the only time inside the courtroom. The rest of the days he waived his right to be here. Now he only has to show up for sentencing if the judge actually orders him to be here. And now we know this afternoon the state will request that the judge does that. I do want to tell you, I was actually out here with Harmony Montgomery's mother having a discussion about what the past few years have been like for her, what it was like sitting through this trial. When we got the word that this verdict came down, the two of us actually ran inside that building. When we entered the courtroom, the gallery was packed with people, with law enforcement, primarily from the Manchester Police Department. You may remember about 25% of Manchester's police force worked on this case. They put every ounce of resource that they had into solving this case, a lot of them filling the courtroom today. Also inside was Harmony's foster mother. She was locked in arms with Crystal Sorey, Harmony's mother. The two of them very emotional as those guilty verdicts came down. When that second-degree murder guilty verdict was read, you heard a very large sigh of relief from the gallery in the courtroom. A lot of them relieved to hear that.
Okay, that one cut off, but my whole point on that was that the judge doesn't have to now we're going to go into that. Now they're searching for the remains. That's what's next. But first, the judge doesn't have to they don't have to grant it. If the defense somehow has a compelling reason why he shouldn't be there, then he doesn't have to be there. So let's really hope that first we got justice for Harmony. Second, let's hope that they find her remains at some point. But before that, if they don't, let's make him be accountable, listen to victim impact statements, and really just be able to look that man in the face, everybody, the national, the world, and see what a piece of shit he is. Sorry. All right, so I'm going to do this after court. The prosecution talks and he reacts to the verdict. I really want to watch this with you. So let's check this out.
Senior Assistant Attorney General Benjamin Agati, currently the Chief of the Homicide Unit at the New Hampshire Department of Justice. It's my understanding folks might have a couple of questions. We've just had our verdict upstairs with regards to the state versus Adam Montgomery. He was found guilty on all the charges that were pending against him. That included second-degree assault for punching and causing a black eye on Harmony back in July of 2019, as well as for all of the offenses that he was charged with, that the jury found him guilty of beyond a reasonable doubt, for the second-degree murder of his daughter, Harmony Montgomery, as well as falsifying physical evidence, the abuse of her corpse, and witness tampering with regards to Kayla Montgomery. So those I know are certainly the charges. I'm happy to take questions at any time.
And we're interested to know how you're feeling in this moment.
Very, very grateful for the jury. This is a very, very difficult case in terms of the number of witnesses that had to testify, that they had to listen to. This jury had to pay attention to 50 witnesses in a little over the course of roughly 8 days. That's a lot of testimony. There's a lot of different factors. You had multiple different charges. They had to consider the July crime separate from what occurred in December and on forward. That's a lot of work for a jury, and they have done that very, very well. And so we were greatly appreciative to the jury's time and attention. They had to listen to facts that the Manchester Police Department and that the community have lived with. And I think a lot of people didn't really know all the facts until they actually heard and saw the witnesses at trial. And as a result of that, again, we're very, very grateful for the jury for their time and their attention on this. And it's a very big relief that they have seen through and that they've held him accountable for the actions that he's committed.
And as prosecutors and law enforcement, I know this isn't about you, but I can't help but notice that there were some tears in your eyes. This case was different. Talk about that and why.
I would say, I don't know if I would say it's different, only because I know other statements that I've heard in the past is to say, why was so much time and resources put towards this little girl? And sometimes even from others saying, well, where are the resources for these other cases? Every person who has their life taken from them on murder, whether it is a 5-year-old child or a 63-year-old man or a 45-year-old, every single person has a value of their lives. And so while some have said, why was so much attention here? That attention is something that the Manchester Police Department, that all of the different law enforcement agencies put into every homicide case.
How many people here watched the closing arguments? I'm curious because I'm not sure if at the end I'm going to play it, but Ben Agati's was very powerful. And that's why I wanted to listen to this, to his reaction to this after. After him, we're going to play Crystal Sorey and her reaction to this and what she has to say. And then we'll get into where is Harmony Montgomery and what's happening next. But yeah, this guy is our hero. And he's right. They put a lot of resources into this. And I hope they do that for every child that they can. Now, Sadie's mama was talking earlier about the case. There's another little blonde girl, and I don't even want to say that. Audrey Cunningham case. I didn't want to disrespect her by not saying her name. So the Audrey Cunningham case was just heartbreaking. And, they put a lot of resources on that as well. Unfortunately, like a day or two later, it didn't turn out the way any of us wanted to, and they didn't it wasn't a happy ending other than versus this, they brought the little girl home. So the defense was trash. So the defense was trash. I actually would prefer just to play. I agree with you. I want to play Ben Agati. The defense was just on closing arguments. It was garbage. So yeah, I'm gonna let me finish playing this, and then we'll get to Crystal Sorey, and we'll play that one because that was just so powerful. At that moment, I knew there was going to be justice for Harmony
In this state. And so this case was different in terms of some of the attention that it garnered, but not in terms of the value of Harmony's life or the value of anybody else's life being taken here in New Hampshire and having the same attention being brought to it and trying to hold those accountable in a court of law, hold them accountable and have some justice.
There was an extra dimension of community involvement because this started as a missing persons case. And it just feels like there is a more public vested interest in all homicides. I didn't mean to equivocate
That's okay.
this case.
That's
but
okay.
There is a next level to this because of that community involvement from the moment of that New Year's Eve press conference where they said, help us find this little girl.
And that community involvement has been tremendous. Residents in Manchester, but not even just Manchester. So there were residents all around the country who had different tips. We heard some of that at trial with regards to tips that came in from Florida, from Arizona. And those tips were followed up on by partners that we've worked with, the Manchester Police Department has worked with for years. And they were so important to being able to find even sometimes very, very minute pieces. Again, at trial, we heard about one particular tip in Arizona that was tracked down, and somebody thought that is worthwhile to call in to try to find somebody who was missing. And that mattered. And you might think it doesn't matter, but it really does matter. And that's the type of work that was done here. And it's not just the Manchester Police Department, although they have been lions in pursuing this case. It's also the work of the partners that they've been able to team up with. That's New Hampshire State Police, New Hampshire Fish and Game, here in this state, as well. I almost gave the list. I got to remember New Hampshire Department of Corrections and their investigative staff, who've done also a fantastic job. Its counterparts in other states, as you heard during trial, Massachusetts State Police, Massachusetts State Police Dive Team, the Revere Police. You've heard in trial, there was also had assistance from the Maine State Police, also from Maine Fish and Game. Our federal partners, Billy Tufts and everybody over there at the U.S. Marshals Service, as well as the United States Attorney's Office here for the state of New Hampshire. You also had a tremendous amount of work by the FBI in the search of 644 Union Street and other work there. If you want to talk about outside coalitions, not only those other departments, but the National Center for Missing and
Yeah, right now he's telling you about all of the resources that they put into this and what they're still doing to find Harmony's body. So this is great. You know, I commend them. You can see people out there searching, and obviously they haven't found her yet. So with these search efforts, and hopefully they have more funding to continue on before it doesn't happen, right? And maybe they'll find minimal remains now that we know being stuffed in a cooler, being stuffed in a bag. We know it's a small amount, but we do know that police dogs can find the smallest amount of DNA, blood, anything that they can get a trace on that's human remains. So maybe they will find a bag that has some of the remains. But yeah, kudos to this man, Ben Agati, and all of these investigators. We got a few more minutes on this. I want to hear what he has to say.
exploited children, which does this work not only on this case, but every missing adult and child that they can help out every day. You're also talking about some outside agencies like New England Canine Search and Rescue, who volunteered their dogs to be able to help search on several different places. That is a community response. It's a national response. And it could not be more appreciated in a moment like right now.
We just heard from Harmony's mother, and you may have addressed this already, but she still hopes to find Harmony. Where does this mean the end of the search for Harmony? What?
Excellent question. And the answer is it does not. One of the things that we could not state before, but we can more clearly state now after the verdict, is during trial, people heard the last place that Adam Montgomery had driven that U-Haul to. And I have some specifics on that. I'm hoping people are paying attention. He had that U-Haul between March 3rd into March 4th in 2020. He drove 133 miles. We heard about that on that U-Haul. Subtracting back the 2.3 miles back and forth, or sorry, 3.2 from the rental, that left him with roughly a 106-mile road trip all the way down, at least through the Tobin bridge tolls, we know, northbound, southbound, northbound again through those tolls, and then back to Manchester. That only left him with 26 miles of driving that he could have done between where he was at the Econo Lodge in Manchester and going through the Tobin those 3 times. What that means is, and we know that he went through no New Hampshire tolls. So what that means is that she is somewhere along that route. And you heard about the searches that have been done, specifically in the Rumney Marsh Reservation in Revere, around the Sales Creek area, the Chelsea Creek area, behind North Shore Road. Revere Police, Mass State Police have been relentless in searching those areas with the Manchester Police Department. These ladies and gentlemen drove down and worked with them hand in hand. Those are still our big areas of search, and our big areas that we're hoping that somebody sees something. Everybody who might have seen the trial also would have seen the CMC bag. And there was a demonstrative that was used during trial. It was the exact same type bag. Had light tan, it was canvas, had dark colored straps, and had a CMC logo in the middle. That was positively identified by multiple witnesses as the bag that Adam Montgomery had the last night that he had that bag and the U-Haul. So that bag went somewhere along that route and somewhere within no more than 26 miles off of that route down and back to Revere. Also at this trial, what was pointed out was the fact that Adam Montgomery was from the Revere area. He would know it very well. That is still a high area of interest. And we are still asking for anybody now who has heard this information, who's seen this information. If you see this bag, if you hear about this bag, if you walk in one of these areas, you take the dog out for a walk, if you see anything like that that seems to be disturbed, to please let us know. You heard also at trial that Harmony's body was bagged up several times.
So this trial, immediately after it's over, this man that just tried this case, he tried his heart out on this. His closing statement was so powerful, opening statement and all the way through. And after this trial, he's still talking about the resources and what they're going to do to try to find this body. So, this is awesome here. I appreciate this man so much. I would never want to be in this predicament, but anybody that is, you can tell that he's putting his heart into it. Let's finish listening to it, and then we'll listen to Crystal Sorey. But man, wow, they're looking for that bag. They're looking for anything that it was transferred into. And I'm assuming it probably is in some type of bag, that he didn't just bury it with nothing. He kept it in something. And maybe that's where he left it, was in that final bag.
Inside of that CMC bag, there's a high likelihood that there may still be parts of her that we can recover, part of her body, pardon me just for a second, part of her body that we can recover. We're really hoping that we can do that. We really hope that she can get the burial that she deserves, that everybody deserves.
Do you think that he'll ever cooperate with you and your investigators and lead you to the body at any point? Do you have hope for that?
I don't know that I can speculate with regards to what Adam Montgomery thinks, the choices that he's made between when he did this, the choice to do what he did, and then the choices he's made since then. I can't speculate on what choice he may make in the future about whether or not to say where she is, but he knows where she is. So,
Ken, what's your message to anyone that thinks they can dispose of a body and get away with murder in New Hampshire?
With regards to that, if anybody who thinks that they can do that, certainly we have cases every day where individuals do things like that. They try to falsify physical evidence, and the work of law enforcement has been tireless to find out who they are, track them down, and hold them accountable. Go ahead. Hold on just a second. She got you first. Under RSA 651:4-A, and I know that's a mouthful, but underneath that particular statute, it says that a defendant shall be brought forward for a statement from a victim in a crime involving a homicide and needs to be here for sentencing unless otherwise excused by the court. That's the statute. As you may have heard in the courtroom, we will be filing with the court and asking the court to enforce that RSA so that he is present for sentencing. Go ahead.
This was a tough case. The victim has never been found, so you prosecuted a murder without a body. And your star witness was somebody who had credibility issues, yet it only took this jury about 7 hours to come back with a guilty verdict on all counts. Do you have any thoughts on how that all came together? Because that's not an easy thing to do.
Well, I obviously don't know what the deliberations were back in the jury. That is sacrosanct with the jury. It's something that neither the court nor the parties will ever ask about.
So this is the third time. I'm pausing it real quick, and then we'll listen to that. These are all great questions. I'm glad he did this. So third time that we've heard that they really want to enforce Adam Montgomery being in court for sentencing. So everybody, the entire community, anybody that's watching, anybody that's sharing or gets a hold of this, hits the algorithm, please put good vibes out there and pray whatever you do that the judge forces this guy, no matter what he says, to be in that court for victim impact statements and sentencing. Now, I'm going to cover that. I hope it's not during the middle of the day, but I'll recap it later. If so, I got to work. I need money to even be able to do this fun stuff. So, yes, let's put out good vibes that they're going to bring his ass in there. And if they have to strip search him and drag him in there, he's going to be in there. And he's not going to have some shit excuse that, he has a hangnail or he doesn't want to be strip searched. Maybe he didn't groom himself that day. So he doesn't want anyone to see his unshaven balls, right? Who cares, Adam? Let's get him in court. Let's finish this.
That's their decision making of how they went forward. But one of the things you saw at trial was the tremendous amount of corroboration here. So it wasn't just one person and their say-so, even though that person's say-so could have been enough to simply find a guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. There were so many other parts to this, so many other witnesses that did come forward that corroborated different parts of the story that had been told. So I think taking the whole into account is something that every jury does, and certainly I would imagine that that's what this jury did here as well.
What sense did you get from the jury? Did you think they got it? I mean, obviously you delivered a guilty verdict, but talking to them, was there a sense that this was going to end up this way?
I don't know that I had any more sense than anyone else in terms of usually when giving a closing argument, certainly that's something where I'm focused more on making sure that I'm telling and recounting what happened truthfully and accurately for the jury. You folks would be in a better position than I would to be able to read the jury and try to interpret how they were receiving it.
How about in terms of him not showing up before? How did that impact the trial, do you think?
Well, the jury was specifically instructed. They could not take that into account. They could not even discuss that during deliberation. So we imagine that the jury followed the judge's instructions and that was not taken into account. That is his choice. If he chooses to not be here for trial, then that's what he would like, and that's what he gets.
Are you looking forward to seeing him at sentencing? I mean, you've been working on this case for some time.
The only thing I can respond to that is at the last sentencing that occurred, which was last year, he stated that he did not kill his daughter and that he looked forward to the trial. We look very much forward to sentencing.
Don't we all look forward to sentencing, right? Let me remind you all, sentencing is May 9th. If anybody gets a hold of that, if anybody sees it first, when on May 9th or like what time as it gets closer, please let me know. You can email me. Any of you guys can always email me at my Gmail. So guilty of crime by j@gmail.com, or I know nobody emails anymore. So guess what? All my social medias are on my YouTube page, but Facebook is one that everybody seems to like to use. So you can do Facebook. It's JAI and then Scott, like you see it there, or it's facebook.com/twisted images. Any of them you can hit up on my YouTube page. Now, mic drop. Yeah. Let's watch the Crystal Sorey when they caught her out of court, when they caught her coming out, and her reaction, just because I think it's important. I at first I wasn't sympathetic towards her, but my mind really got changed once I heard a lot more about it. So let's watch what she has to say. And this is after the sentencing. All right.
As the verdict has been announced, we have family members leaving the court. Let's take a listen.
So you were here most days.
Yeah.
Each trial, I guess, was there anything that stuck out to you? How hard was it for you to hear some of these awful details?
I'd heard it so much over the last 4 years. It just was a lot different hearing it from their mouths than reading it, It was very hard, but I have to stay strong for my boys. I'm going on 5 years clean, and I'm proud, very proud of that, and this didn't impact that in any way. I know people thought that, but it didn't, and this can only make me stronger from here on out. I'm her voice. I'm person that's going to carry her on besides my loved ones, carry her memory and make sure that no one ever forgets about her.
Crystal, I'm sure it's hard to hear. Do you believe the version of events that they said happened in the courtroom? Do you believe that's what happened to your daughter?
What the defense said?
What the prosecutor said?
Yes.
Kayla said?
Yes.
I
believe that.
You've gotten your strength for all this. That, you know, Adam wasn't in the courtroom even on the day that they delivered the verdict. What is your reaction that he wasn't here today to hear those words and sit there and listen to that guilty verdict?
He's a coward. He's a coward. He's always been a coward. Hence why he did what he did. He took away from the people that loved her because he couldn't hack that he didn't have control. That's all he cared about, was control of everything in his life. She wasn't anything to him.
Crystal, what's next?
A lot. I just can't say yet.
Do you plan to be there for sentencing?
Right now, as this verdict comes down?
She's here with me. And she is the one that keeps me strong every day.
He was held accountable today. Is there other people that should be held accountable for what happened, including the state of Massachusetts, the state of New Hampshire?
I won't talk about that.
Will you be there for sentencing and give an impact statement? He is supposed to be there for sentencing. Are you looking forward to seeing him and maybe confronting him?
Yes, I'll be there. And I'll be looking him in the face while I say my impact statement, because he can't get away from that. He has to be there. So he has to listen.
After all is said and done, would you say justice has been served for your daughter?
We're almost there.
Crystal,
We're almost there.
Crystal, they mentioned that in closing, that your daughter was robbed of dignity, she was robbed of a peace, and she was robbed of a tombstone, a place to go. She's still out there somewhere. How important is that part of this? It's not over for you.
That's still a huge part of it. It's not over. It's not going to be over until she's found. And we are still looking. The police, we as a family, we are still looking.
And Crystal, your message to everyone that has really been impacted and touched by this case?
I just want to thank everybody for the love and the support, and for the people that believed in me and reached out to me this whole time and never doubted me. The people that know me have known my whole life. They know how much I loved my daughter. They know how much I fought for her, and I did everything I could. And when I didn't have anything left, I still tried. So for the people that doubted me, they don't matter to me. They're not a thought in my mind.
Do you have a message for Adam today if he's listening to any of this or heard the verdict? What would you say to him today?
That I hope that what he did plays over in his mind every single waking moment that he lives on this earth. And I hope that he never falls asleep without seeing her beautiful face.
Did you think that this day would come when you struggled with this? Did you ever think that this day would come?
I knew it would, because that's why I did all that I did, so that it would.
Did it give you any solace at all?
A little bit of peace, but she's still out there, so that's what I think about every day.
What are your thoughts on all the work police have done already and continue to do?
Oh, the police have been amazing. They still reach out to me and tell me all of the, they're doing, and they all showed up here today to be there for her. That meant a lot to me.
Thank you, Crystal.
Crystal, thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, y'all. That was good. I hadn't seen that yet, and I know I'm a couple of days behind. The guilty verdict, that made my day. Oh, that made my day when I heard it. That was on Thursday, I believe. And I've been covering the case. So since I've been covering the case, I really wanted to catch up on the things that I hadn't covered and then talk about what happens next. So thank you for watching it with me, y'all. This is great. I appreciate you. I know my channel is very new. I feel like I've gotten a lot of traction in the last month, and I'm very grateful for it. I want you to know, everybody to know firsthand, whether you're watching it now or you're listening to it on replay, or maybe somebody comes back and listens to this later on. I want you to know that my community is always going to be a safe community for you all and for myself. So as we get bigger, if people start to say nasty things and whatever, I'm going to ignore them, honestly, especially while I'm doing a live. I'm going to ignore them. And even after, I'm going to ignore them. Hopefully at some point I get moderators that will help. But last night I was on a live, and I've been on a live almost 3 times, 4 times, 5 times this week on other people's channels. And I not only do I just go on their channel, but I actually talk to them personally behind the scenes and am friends with these people. And last night it was the first time I had someone kind of being nasty to me. So I'm not going to put up with that on my channel. On other people's channel, I'm not going to make a big deal because it's not my place to do so. I can set them straight in a nice way. But my community is never going to be that way. And when it is, I'll take care of it. And thank you, Sadie's mama. I appreciate that. There was a few people that did, and the person actually got kicked out for like 5 minutes. But my other thing is I don't know how to set the rules just yet, but I do know that anybody that's a creator, if you all start a channel, let's say Sadie's mama, because you're just amazing. You have more knowledge than I do about everything, and I love talking to you. But if anybody becomes a creator, you can I will boost you up on my channel and make sure that everybody knows, and you're welcome to talk about the cases you're doing, and I would love to collaborate with you. That's the kind of channel I want to be. Yeah, Carly, you're awesome. You are the best channel manager that I know, and you and True Crime Investigates are great because you don't sit there and say, oh, don't talk about your cases, or there's a lot of creators that don't want other people to bring up other creators. I'm not really sure why, because I'm one of those people that wants to say, hey, you're a creator, let's work together, come on my channel, let me come on yours, let's get you up there. So yeah, I do that with people, and I want you to know that anybody that starts a channel and anybody you want to talk about in here about the creator, you can. If you see something on Grizzly True Crime or the lawyer or Zav, tell me about it. I want to know. Yeah. She apologized. She didn't know. Well, yes. Yeah, there's room for everyone. And you know what? I know I'm still talking about this case, but I just had to say this because I want to make sure that everybody knows that going in the future, I don't have those kind of rules that I don't want people talking about other people. Talk about other people's channels in a good way, and let's all work together. This entire world is fucked up because so many people have too much money, and then there's others of us that don't have enough. So you know what? This is really, this is one of those things. There's enough people in this world and enough channels and enough things that people want to watch to boost everybody up. So let's do that, and let's make sure that we keep it cool in here as it gets bigger. And don't forget the people that I have talked to at the beginning. When I can't see the chat, I'm going to give you my cell phone number so you can text me so I don't miss something. If you want it, you can use it. Just because, that's just how I'm going to be with this. So, yes, Jennifer de Grizzly. I love Grizzly True Crime. I love Gizela. She's great. She does a great job, and that's her job all day. So, I don't get to do this all day long, and I work full time and have a 9-year-old and a lot of other side hustles that I do. So right now, everything that I'm spending is my money, and I'll continue to do that for a long time. I'm okay with that. But all of you being here, I just wanted you to know, because I got Jennifer, Jared 13, Sadie's mom, Carly, Braveheart, whoever I didn't mention, you all are the first ones here, and I have a feeling this channel will grow just because I have a good networking outreach, and for some reason people want to see me do more stuff. So that being said, let's get back to our stuff. let's keep it real in here. The things I say, I'm going to back myself up and I'll say it over and over and over again. And I'm only going to tell you what I would say on a freaking stage, right? If I say it to you personally, Sadie's mama, I'm going to say it to everybody. So that's what you kind of need to know about me. I just want you to know that. All right, so so there's a friend that testifies. I wanted to go back a little bit. How long is this? Oh, it's 1 minute and 53 seconds. Great. I just want to show this quickly because it's kind of important and I didn't see it. And I just want you to see a little bit of it before we get into the longer video. All right, so it says Adam Montgomery's girlfriend found dead in the hotel room. All right, well, let's put that on. I wanted to see that.
According to court documents, Kelsey Small told police she was romantically involved with Adam Montgomery for more than a year. Kelsey told detectives she was aware Adam had 4 children with 2 women, but said Adam never mentioned Harmony Montgomery at all, and she did not have information about where she may be. During that same roadside interview, Adam Montgomery told detectives that Harmony was fine, but that he had not seen her since her biological mother came to Manchester to pick her up around Thanksgiving of 2019. Crystal Sorey is Harmony's mother, who raised the alarm about Harmony not being seen. Adam Montgomery was arrested in early January on an assault charge for hitting Harmony and remains inside Valley Street Jail. He has not requested a bail hearing. Kelsey Small is not implicated in any way in Harmony's disappearance, but there was hope she might have information from Adam that she might eventually share. Kelsey's cousin released a statement through a spokesperson that says, quote, "She was so much more than that, and I hate that one of her last connections here on earth was to him." News 9 obtained Goffstown police records that reveal Kelsey was arrested outside a sober home where she was living, charged with DUI, second offense. She was released on bail. 5 days later, she was found dead in a hotel room.
And Kelsey Small's death is not considered suspicious. We're live in Manchester this evening. Amy Cavino, WMUR News 9.
All right, so everybody knows about that, I'm sure. I heard everybody talking about it, and I don't know exactly when it happened. Maybe someone can fill me in. I don't know. I don't want to sit there and speculate and say it was like that it was any time, because I really don't know. It might have been in between or before Kayla, or maybe I heard that he cheated on Kayla. It might have been that, but I think it was before. So I really don't know exactly when it happened, but I really wanted to bring that up because it shows the things that surround Adam, right? And I don't know if it's because she's a drug dealer or a drug addict. I'm sorry that they're saying it's not suspicious. Maybe she OD'd, whatever. But that tends to happen when it comes to people that do drugs. They don't get the same type of attention. So yeah, it's not recent. Okay, it's definitely not recent, but not recent at all. It's before. But yeah, they don't care. Now, if she had rich parents and the rich parents were poking at the cops and saying, "I want to know what happened to my daughter," you definitely would better believe that there would be a national news outreach and people would be all over it and you'd hear about it. But yeah, not so. But a lot of people were talking about it and I wanted to bring it up. So I believe she was like, they arrested Kayla and Adam and she thought she's next. Okay, so it was kind of in between all that. It wasn't way before and it wasn't, it was after Kayla left him, but they were okay. So yeah, that's what I thought. I thought they had broken up. Kayla and him broke up and then that happened. I don't know the year, but I just wanted to show that. So, all right. So I have let me see how long this is. Oh, former friend testifies Adam claimed he sent Harmony back to mother. Let's see this one real quick. It's only not even 2 minutes, and then we'll go on to the other one. I love showing this stuff and filling in the gaps. on the cases. Sorry about that.
Also have breaking news in the Adam Montgomery trial. Prosecutors have just rested their case. The final witness was a Manchester investigator who talked about searching for Harmony Montgomery's body. Adam Montgomery is on trial for murdering his daughter Harmony. Another witness this morning was a woman who describes herself as Adam's.
Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because the whole thing is about finding Harmony Montgomery. So the opening statement was finding her body. And so I just wanted to throw this up there for a couple of minutes. And this was the lady, I believe, that said Adam hates her. Oh, how could you hate a beautiful little girl like that? Anyway, okay.
Best friend. She says he told her he sent Harmony back to her birth mother because of the girl's continued bathroom accidents. In her testimony today, Rebecca Maines also claimed that Adam said he hated his daughter because she was so much like her mother. And in the most recent twist in this case, Adam Montgomery's attorneys are trying to get the testimony of the state's star witness thrown out. Catherine Underwood is live in the newsroom now with the latest on that. Catherine.
Well, Jane, in a motion filed over the weekend, the defense accuses the state of trying to influence Kayla Montgomery's testimony by informing her of what the defense said during opening statements. Now, the defense says the state unfairly prepared Kayla for cross-examination by telling her attorney to inform her of the defense's strategy they laid out in opening statements, that she was alone with Harmony and the last one to see the little girl alive. According to the motion, Adam's attorneys accuse the state of violating a trial rule that requires all witnesses, which would include Kayla, to be sequestered so they can't hear opening statements. The state filed an objection to that motion today, saying it did not violate the sequestration order and that there was no improper conduct. Now, throughout the trial so far, the judge has been quick to rule on last-minute motions, and there is a chance that she...
I didn't finish that because guess what? Adam Montgomery got found guilty. Guilty on all counts. Okay, so yeah, I can go back. If you give me her name, Sadie's mama, I'll go back and grab a link from that. I can do that while I'm playing another video. So this one I want to show is the Where is Harmony Montgomery? And it's with Vinnie Politan. And we got to love him. He's very like, go get him. I hope to be that blunt one day. And when I am, it's because I know exactly what I'm talking about and I know exactly how I feel. And I don't want to offend anyone. Maybe at some point I'll get there. Love Vinnie Politan. Let's listen to him because this is the reason why I wanted to show this and what's next and where is Harmony Montgomery.
Stepmother Kayla and two younger half-brothers. Harmony was living a very tumultuous life with a man she barely knew. Adam was in prison when Harmony was born, but somehow he got full custody when Harmony's mother missed a court hearing because she was in court in another courthouse for another one of her children. And the judge and the lawyers did not delay the hearing, something that should have been requested by the attorneys and something any judge has the discretion to do. The result of that hearing was a death sentence for Harmony, living in a car with 4 other family members. Absolutely shook Harmony to the point that she was having accidents. These accidents resulted in brutal beatings by her father, the last one killing her. And today, the jury declared Adam Montgomery is a child killer. But that leaves one question still unanswered. Where is Harmony? Tonight, we take a look at all the big moments and the fallout from this verdict. Plus, we take a look at new information regarding the search for Harmony as we continue our investigation into what happened to this little angel.
I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you for joining us. It's my justice tie tonight. It's a verdict tie, but it's a justice tie. Justice for Harmony Montgomery. 5 years. She only lived 5 years, and it was a very difficult 5 years for this girl. But today, the jury told us what happened. And that's significant because that doesn't always happen in these cases. In cases where children die or disappear at the hands of their own parents, sometimes they don't get justice. Sometimes there's not even a person in the courtroom wanting justice for that child because it's their own parent or parents who are responsible for what happened. But in this case, there is justice. So we can exhale tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We can exhale on that fact. But we shouldn't think that everything's okay. She's still not resting in peace.
Exactly.
She hasn't been found.
She hasn't been found.
She wasn't
He's right.
buried. She was discarded. Her body was destroyed. And it hasn't been recovered. And because of that, this is not over. Right? The trial's over, but this is not over. There still has to be some level.
Look at how sad he looks. I mean, he genuinely looks sad. We're all heartbroken over here. Absolutely. But it's rare that I see Vinnie Politan taking a breath, slowing down, and not being so heated. And I'm sure he's heated inside about the whole case, but he really is taking kind of a moment of silence for Harmony. This is the reason that I did this live today. Not to announce the guilty verdict because everybody knows it, but let's talk about Harmony and getting full justice and finding her body.
Of concern that someone just disappears and we don't find her. She doesn't get a proper burial and memorial and service, an opportunity to rest in peace. That doesn't happen. Well, we heard today that it's not over. They're still going to be looking for her in some way, in some form. And we're going to talk about that tonight, what was said today after the verdict and what it means and where people should be keeping their eyes open because it's not over. Now, one way that this could get closer to being over is if this coward speaks. This child killer speaks. A man too afraid to even show up to his own trial, to hear the evidence about what he did to his own child. So if he speaks, then that search area can narrow and can intensify, and there could be at least an opportunity to try to find Harmony and try to recover and try to give her some form of a proper burial and an ending and an ability to say, okay, now we know where you're resting and you're resting in peace tonight, Harmony. But short of the coward speaking, I don't know. I don't know if you're going to be able to find her. And that, to me, is the tragedy that still is this saga of what has unfolded. And of course, the first tragedy was that he was given custody. And then the second.
Yeah, I want to say this to people so they know where I'm coming from. And I hope that a lot of people are coming from this space too. Just because you don't find a body doesn't mean that you can't put them to rest. I am heavily into spirituality, and I believe that her spirit's around her mom and her family, and a body is just something that's like a vessel for us to be alive and interact with people. But if they don't find her body, I don't think that she's not at rest. I truly believe that she's still at rest. And I hope that Crystal, her mom, and her family and other people can, in their hearts, put her to rest and know that she's okay. So, you know, a body's just a body. Once you pass away, that's it. It's gone. We're done. But it doesn't mean anything that it doesn't mean that your spirit's not either at rest or with your family. So I want to say that now. I want to say that because a lot of people like can't move on because the body hasn't gotten found. And I don't want people to do that. I want them to understand that it's okay. You can still move on. And I bet you that in their spirit, they'd want you to also. And the same with Harmony. I'm sure she wouldn't want anybody grieving for her this way. All right, let's watch.
Second tragedy was that no one followed up. The third tragedy was the murder of this little girl. And the final tragedy is that we can't find her. So as I mentioned off the top, it's verdict day. It's a day for justice for Harmony Montgomery. Let's take a look at what happened.
As to charge ID 193-794-7C, charging the defendant, Adam Montgomery, with the crime of second-degree assault, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
You say that he's guilty, Mr. Foreperson?
That is correct.
So say you all, ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Yes.
As to charge ID 202-7112C, charging the defendant, Adam Montgomery.
Bring in Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson, joining us live from New Hampshire tonight. Has been there throughout, was there before this trial started, investigating this story, this case, speaking to everyone involved. Let's talk about reaction to this verdict tonight. Matt, what can you tell us?
Yeah, Vinny, nice to see you. As you're talking about Adam Montgomery, the coward, the convicted child killer, not in court at this courthouse in New Hampshire today, it was a packed courtroom and very tense as we were waiting for that verdict to be read. It was packed in the gallery with investigators, with canine officers, with Manchester police. There were everyday people, those court watchers that watch court TV, along with, of course, Harmony's mother, Crystal Sorey. She was there with her support group, and she broke down at times during today and also during this very tough trial with very difficult facts. Outside the courthouse, we spoke with her along with the other local media. She was swarmed by everybody as she was trying to leave. And of course, we asked her her thoughts about Adam not showing his face. Take a listen.
He's a coward. He's a coward. He's always been a coward. That's why he did what he did. He took away from the people that loved her because he couldn't hack that he didn't have control. That's all he cared about, was control of everything in his life. She wasn't anything to him.
What are your thoughts of Harmony?
100%, everybody here. This is why he's not at court. It's control. I 110%, not just 110% believe that he is not at court because he wants to control everything, and he wants to control the narrative of it. He wants to control that he doesn't have to be there, that they still have to tell the jury, don't consider Adam Montgomery not being here because whatever, it's bullshit. It's just his way to control the situation. And so I really hope, and I know everybody is like, oh, the judge is going to rule it, he has to, but please, dear Lord, whatever is out there, make him go and listen to the victim impact statements, and let's hope that he doesn't find some way to get out of it, right? No matter what it is, let's all put out those vibes that he's going to be there at sentencing, because this man is just all about control. He is a coward, but he's also a woman beater, a child beater, and anybody that's weaker than him is who he controls and who he beats up.
Harmony right now, as this verdict comes down?
She's here with me, and she is the one that keeps me strong every day.
She told me that earlier today as we were waiting for the verdict, waiting for that overhead page saying all parties for the Montgomery case return to the room for that verdict reading. Earlier today, she's told me that she got strength by talking to her daughter, and she was wearing that sweatshirt that said Justice for Harmony earlier today. She was also wearing pink, of course, Harmony's favorite color, and both she and Michelle Rafferty, the mom that she also knew, that foster mother, they were wearing Minnie Mouse jewelry. She said that she does plan to be at that sentencing, Vinnie, and give an impact statement for her daughter.
I think that'll be a significant moment, a very significant moment, and an important moment for her. You know, look at Crystal Sorey, someone who struggled with addiction herself, but went to get help. She went to get help. And, you know, as we sit here tonight, I have a feeling that what has transpired here will keep her motivated, keep her focused in living the rest of her life and being a mother the rest of her life. Let's get back to this jury. So I think a lot of people are expecting a very quick verdict here. From my perspective, it wasn't a super long trial, but it wasn't a short trial. There was, you know, over 2 weeks of testimony, you know, over the course of about 8 days or so. So there was a lot of information for this jury. So I thought they came back at a, you know, sort of an average time, but they did have a question today.
Right. You know, this was a lengthy jury trial for New Hampshire standards. There was 10 days of testimony. We had the jury view included in that. We also had 47 witnesses that took the stand. Again, the defense, who didn't have to put on a case, they didn't call one witness. But yeah, there was some tense moments today when we were all called for that jury question. And the question was this: how does court define consciously disregarded? And of course, that goes to the question of, you know, murder in the second degree, because that was part of the wording for that. So maybe that was what these jurors were considering at the time and what kept them for several hours, because within that verbiage, it said the state must prove that the defendant was aware of the risk and consciously disregarded it. That's the bottom of that statement there. Remember, this was a lengthy jury questionnaire. And not long after that, Vinnie, we were called back. It was about an hour or so, called back, and they reached a verdict.
You know, when a question like that, I think is a good question, because there aren't lawyers on the jury most of the time. I was recently a lawyer on a jury, but generally speaking, there are folks who don't understand this legal, I call it legal mumbo jumbo, but it's the way lawyers and judges and courts sort of write things, and it doesn't always necessarily make common sense. So that I thought that was a good question.
This guy disregards everything. So it makes total sense that he disregarded that portion and being in the courtroom. It's almost guaranteed that if you aren't at your own trial, that it's going to affect it somehow. So yeah, his reasoning of not wanting to be strip searched every day when everybody else has to go through the same things and defend themselves, and to say that he didn't do it is utter disrespect and disregard. And I'm seeing a picture of him here, and he looks all, you know, hardcore with his eye drop. Maybe he didn't want the teardrop. Maybe he didn't want them to see that. I don't know. They saw it anyway. But just curious, has anyone else seen pictures of him? And I'm sure you have seen the pictures of him back in the day. I don't know if it was before he did drugs, but he didn't look like that at all. He was kind of a chunky little guy. He wore glasses. He looked like a big nerd. And nothing wrong with nerds. I'm a giant nerd here. Nothing against that. But he didn't look like that. And now he looks like he's all hardcore and don't mess with me. I bet you if he got in the ring with almost anybody except a woman or a little girl, and even some women, I would tell you, I watch a lot of that UFC and boxing with the ladies, and they would kick his ass. In 30 seconds, he'd be done. So, yeah, he's pure evil, and it matches him now.
And they got the clarification, and that they were able to get to the verdict. Now, let's talk about the other part of what hasn't happened here, which is the recovery of little Harmony. She hasn't been found. And my understanding is the prosecutor spoke about the search for Harmony today at the press conference after this verdict.
Senior Assistant Attorney General here in the state of New Hampshire that deals with homicide cases, that's Vinnie Politan, who we saw practice in this case and also with the weapons case. And he took to the podium today, and it wasn't a victory lap, and he said that, but he was talking about the fact that his work and these police officers' work, those investigators that you're looking at on your screen, is not over. During the news conference, we were asking him, and I posed the question, do you think that Adam will cooperate now that he has nothing to lose? Here's the answer.
I can't speculate on what choice he may make in the future about whether or not to say where she is, but he knows where she is.
So, they say that the work is not over, and right now they're asking anyone with any information to please call the tip line, and they're really hoping that after the winter months here, when people get back outside, they venture off within the radius.
He's never going to tell anyone, and the reason is it's the same reason that any other person that says that they're not guilty, like Scott Peterson that we did yesterday, has the hope in their evil mind that at some point people are going to come back and say, oh, it wasn't enough evidence. He's innocent. He didn't tell where she was. He didn't do it. He doesn't know. Whatever. He knows, but he's never going to tell anyone because that will mess up his chances of 20, 30 years down the road ever getting out. So he's never going to tell unless he has a coming to Jesus moment, which I don't think that will ever happen. We won't know by him.
Radius of where we think that U-Haul van was, and do some exploring on their own. They know that we're looking for a CMC bag.
Yeah, that's the key. Is to, before we had pictures of Harmony. Well, that's not what we're looking for anymore. At this point, it's going to be that CMC bag, and we're going to talk about that during the rest of this program this hour, because I think that's important. Vinnie Politan, the prosecutor, this guy, every jurisdiction needs a guy like this, someone who's super experienced, super focused, great in the courtroom, and passionate about what he does. And I say this all the time, and people need to understand that these great prosecutors like Vinnie Politan could leave the prosecutor's office and make a lot more money in private practice trying cases for corporations, et cetera. But they choose to do this, and thank goodness that they do. And you spoke with him one-on-one today.
Right, and Vinnie Politan, along with Second Chair Chris Knowles, I mean, they did a fantastic job, and they really don't want any credit for it. This is their second go-around with this particular defendant, and also with the defense attorney, Carolyn Smith, because all of these folks were in that same courtroom when we were talking about the weapons charges 6 months, almost a year ago. And I talked to him about being a little bit more passionate at the podium this go-round, and why this case has meant so much to him personally.
If you're not concerned by this behavior, by this action, by this reaction from a person to a child having accidents and then doing this incredible thing, there's a problem. You need to understand the gravity, not only what the person did, but also for not showing the compassion that you would hope any parent would show. And that's certainly not what he showed towards Harmony. So yeah, with regards to that, in terms of heartfelt experience and showing emotion, I think it's hard not to be for anybody.
I've never seen.
Now, keep in mind, and I know all of you have been following this case, and I'm not sure how much of it you watched, how much you didn't, but this little girl is potty trained. She was potty trained early on. Crystal Sorey said it. The adoptive mother, or she wasn't adoptive yet, but the foster mother said she was potty trained. And so it doesn't lead me to believe. I know in my heart that the only reason she was having accidents, number one, they were stuck in a car. Number two, I bet anytime she said, I got to use the bathroom, oh, you got to wait. We're not doing it right now. We don't have anywhere to go. And number three, she eventually quit asking to even go because she knew that she was going to get repercussions. So instead, you know what she did? She just went in her pants because she was too afraid to even say anything. And so that led to her getting beat for every time she did it. This wasn't an accident that she had in her pants. This was because they were in a car and she was afraid of them, deathly afraid of them. And now we know why. And yes, Kayla was a big part of that because Kayla did nothing. And I know she had more to do with it than what she's saying, but she did absolutely nothing. And keep in mind, everyone, she's going to be out in a year or less. So it would be nice if they would find her guilty on other charges, but I don't think so. And I wonder what she's going to do when she gets out, since she did lose her kids. I wonder if she's going to end up getting them back, since the state usually sides with the mother. So sad.
Before having to cut out a mugshot and having to use that as the identifier because the defendant refused to be there to face the music.
I got to say that was a first for me as well. I don't think I've ever had that situation quite happen before. But he has a right. And if he did not wish to be there, that's fine. The state still has an obligation to prove that the person who's charged is, in fact, Adam Montgomery, is in fact the person that all these people are testifying about. So yes, luckily there is a process to do that. You heard that from the testimony of Max Rayhill to be able to identify that, no, that photo is the individual that I have charged with murder, that I arrested, and that the jurors saw in court on the very first day of jury selection.
And Vinny, Benegatti also tells me that he and Christopher Knowles and his entire team, because it's more than just them that have been working on this for months and years on this particular case and the others, they're really looking forward to sentencing and those victim impact statements.
Well, let's talk about that. When is the sentencing of Adam Montgomery, number one? And what's next for Kayla Montgomery? Because a lot of folks are wondering, okay, she testified here. What's going to be her situation?
Right. So Judge Amy Messer, who presided over both of these trials so far in the state of New Hampshire, she has a full docket, as you can imagine, and she has a lengthy trial ahead. So we are looking at a sentencing date that will be set within the next couple months, probably later in the spring. We know that Crystal Sorey will be there. She is planning to give one of those victim impact statements. And as a result, in the state of New Hampshire, you do not have to be present under law for the length of the trial or the reading of the verdict, but you do have to be present, and he will have to be here when listening to those victim impact statements. So that's interesting. And as for his estranged wife, Kayla Montgomery, who confessed on the stand that she's still in love with the man and she was trying to keep their family together, I'm hearing, have not officially confirmed, but I'm hearing that she's not going to get her kids back, but she is up for parole in a couple months. She said that on the stand. And who's going to be there? Crystal Sorey.
Wow. All right. Matt Johnson, wow, what a case, what a trial.
Yeah, right. We just talked about that. That's great. I hadn't watched this one yet. It just came up yesterday and I wanted to watch it with you all. But yeah, this is great. I hope she doesn't get out on parole yet. I hope Crystal Sorey really makes an impact, and she does as long as she needs to. And I just said, I wonder if she's going to get her kids back, and I hope that she doesn't. She's a terrible mom. And with all of the trauma that she went through with Adam getting beat, watching the murder, being involved in moving the body, she's probably going to go back to using drugs. I can't imagine any other way for that lady, especially one that's still in love with this awful, evil murderer. Damn. Boy.
Trial, what a big day, what a big verdict. Thank you so much for your reporting. Talk to you soon.
Of course.
All right, folks, when we come back, we're going to take a look at the search for Harmony Montgomery, some more of the details that were revealed by the prosecutor today.
only on Court TV.
We just heard from Harmony's mother, and you may have addressed this already, but she still hopes to find Harmony. Where does this mean the end of the search for Harmony? What?
Excellent question. And the answer is it does not. One of the things that we could not state before, but we can more clearly state now after the verdict, is during trial, people heard the last place that Adam Montgomery had driven that U-Haul to. And I have some specifics on that. I'm hoping people are paying attention.
Okay. Some new details tonight, kind of putting the pieces together. Pretty similar to what we did on the show last night in the search for Harmony Montgomery, trying to retrace the steps of Adam Montgomery and where is this sort of range of places where Harmony would likely be. Let's take a listen to the prosecutor, Benegatti, going through some of those details.
He had that U-Haul between March 3rd into March 4th in 2020. He drove 133 miles. We heard about that on that U-Haul. Subtracting back the 2.3 miles back and forth, or sorry, 3.2 from the rental, that left him with roughly a 106-mile road trip all the way down, at least through the Tobin bridge tolls. We know northbound, southbound, northbound again through those tolls, and then back to Manchester. That only left him with 26 miles of driving that he could have done between where he was at the Econo Lodge in Manchester and going through the Tobin those 3 times. What that means is, and we know that he went through no New Hampshire tolls. So what that means is that she is somewhere along that route. And you heard about the searches that have been done, specifically in the Rumney Marsh Reservation in Revere, around the Sales Creek area, the Chelsea Creek area, behind North Shore Road. Revere Police, Mass State Police have been relentless in searching those areas with the Manchester Police Department. These ladies and gentlemen drove down and worked with them hand in hand. Those are still our big areas of search.
Okay, we're talking about big.
Has anyone heard this yet? I know it's really new that he's saying that now that it's after the verdict. So they do have an idea. I mean, a 26-mile range is a lot, but these guys have a whole crew. They probably have the dogs out there. This is great, man. I hadn't heard that they had narrowed it down to that amount. Sadie's mama, yes, I know. I gotta have you on speed dial so I can call you and find out. But yeah, I didn't realize that they had it narrowed down like that. This is great.
Gary here, potentially. I want to show you a map so you can understand a little bit of what these areas are like and where they are. Let's take a look. Let's put it up on the screen. There you see the Tobin Bridge. Again, just like we did on the show last night, the prosecutor doing the same math equation. And you look at these areas that he's talking about. First, you've got the Rumney Marsh Reservation all the way to the north there. Okay, so that's a marsh. It's a reservation, right? It's going to be swampy. Then you've got Chelsea Creek, a creek, that's water. You see the rivers that are running right by there. Obviously, the Tobin Bridge goes over there. Sales Creek, another a part of the water. Also, look on the side there, you got the North Shore Road, and that's running right on the coastline, and there's a whole bunch of water to the right there. So you think about this, and let's not forget the timing of this, okay? This isn't a search where she goes missing and the search is immediate. I mean, they don't even know about this until 2 years later. And then they start to get some of these details and put them together. So there's a good opportunity that the search hasn't been done as completely as possible at this point. And for folks in the public who are just anywhere in this area, what we're looking for is that bag. It's the bag.
I'm glad it came up and we can see that bag. That's such a small bag. And Wolfpack, that's a fantastic question. I don't know that he put all of her remains in one place. That's a good question. So here's 2 things. One, this bag is very small. So if he took this bag and scattered her remains anywhere, it's going to be really hard to find if he put her in separate dumpsters or if they made it into the water. Now, the only problem with the water, you guys, every time somebody does that with the water, even the people that get weighed down, even the people that have, cinder blocks or whatever it may be, a lot of times it gets washed up. So water isn't always the best idea, especially if he put her in the water with the bag. But Juror 13 also brought up a question about if he put her in different trash cans and it made it to the landfill. Well, we're never going to find her body. And this is why I say, people, to everybody, find peace and let's find justice in this guilty verdict. And I'm sure the sentencing is going to give us even more justice. If we never find her body, let's find the peace that we need, the family needs, Harmony needs, knowing that her body was just a vessel to communicate with us, and she's no longer suffering, but it's okay. It's okay if she's never found, because she's laid to rest. Her spirit is laid to rest.
There it is, the CMC bag. This is what investigators are looking for. So, I mean, if you see that, it's a lot of times a wanted poster, you have a picture of someone. No, this is what you're looking for, because this is the bag that contained whatever remained of Harmony Montgomery. All right, let's bring in our guests, and we've got some good ones tonight. In Los Angeles, California, retired FBI special agent, has done so many searches, especially in water. Bobby Chacon is with us. In Salt Lake City, Utah, retired police commander, host of the Profiling Evil podcast, and author of the book Deceived. Mike King has also done a lot of water searches. And in Jacksonville, Alabama, forensic death investigator, professor of forensics at Jacksonville State University, host of the Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan. They talk a lot about what we're really looking for here. So Joseph Scott Morgan, let me begin with you. We know the passage of time here. I put up on the map these possible potential environments that we're talking about. In terms of remains, what do you think could remain at this point?
My biggest concern, Vinny, is going to be the fabric that this bag is made out of. How well would it still be intact after all of this time? If it is still in this marshy area, this is a very harsh area. You're talking about brackish water and salt water. You're talking about sun, you're talking about rain, you're talking about rising tides, you're talking about storm systems that have blown through this area over a period of time. How resilient would that bag be in order to retain this little angel's body, or like you said, what remained of her body? That's going to be the big question. And again, we don't know. Let me ask
you this, Joseph. Yeah. If there's garbage bags within the bag, what would you expect in terms of the remains of Harmony to potentially look like at this point?
Well, depending upon how well they were packaged, you would have some level of containment in there. But, you look at that landscape there and you think about all of the debris that is in the water. Things can get hung up on, torn, ripped. And as you go through time, this bag.
Now, as my channel gets bigger, you'll come to see I love forensics and these people that take the absolute truth of any case because of the forensic and because of science and because of the actual evidence and where the body is, the temperature, the weather, all these type of things, rather than talking about, what could have happened because of, really no evidence. So these guys are great. And Mike King, Profiling Evil, I was just watching his show before I got on. He's great. Love that guy. And he has such a good heart. So yeah, let's listen to this. And this is going to give you a good idea if they think, or if there's a possibility, what type of possibility that we have to find her remains if, and this is a big if the body is still in one bag, one thing, whatever, within the 26 miles with water. That's a lot.
bag, and even the plastic bags, because of all the jostling, are going to become degraded.
All right, Bobby Chacon, we could put the map back up on the screen. I mean, by the North Shore Road, you're talking about a huge body of water, right? We're also talking about a couple of creeks and a marsh at this point. What are your thoughts about if you're able to kind of zone into a particular area, like what would you expect 2 years later?
Well,
not
I mean,
even
the
2
best
years.
case
Not even,
scenario.
wait, excuse me. I say 2 years later, but it's actually 5 years later. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I mean, the best case scenario is if he kept all of her in that one bag. That would be the best case scenario. I mean, we've had on this show, Vinny, cases where a husband kills a wife, dismembers her, and deposits her in different places in different parts of the body. If that happened in this case, it would make it infinitely harder to find Harmony. If she's contained in that one bag, all of her is contained within that one bag, it'll be somewhat easier to find. It's less likely the decay that would take place on human tissue out in the open. To that extent, it would slow it down to a significant degree. If that looks like a canvas bag, that's a good sign. If he dumped her in one place in that bag, that's the best scenario, because sonar could pick it up, handheld sonar or tripod sonar could pick it up. It would make it easier. If he took her out of the bag and he put her in several different places, that's probably a worst case scenario. That'll make it infinitely harder to find her.
All right, Mike King, as always, I know you take a close look at this, your Profiling Evil podcast, but you've also put together something yourself tonight. Can you explain what you put together for us?
Well, I'll tell you what, Vinny, I mean, I spent 300 miles on the road today thinking about this darn thing. And I just kept going back to the two things that we know, the toll times. We know when he went north, he doubled right back immediately, but then he went north again. So if we look at that roughly 25 to 30 minutes, this is really the area that he could have gotten to and got back. Now, he could have taken a road to the north to get back and make his way back up north to home eventually, because we don't see him coming back through the tolls. So we can start to get a little more microscopic in the examination of the geography. And as we learn more, and perhaps if there are pieces in the interviews, some admission that was made, something from the friend, maybe we can get a little more. But we're going to be able to start tightening it down. But again, this is looking for a microscopic needle in a big old haystack.
I want to take a listen here to Ben Agati again. Give me a few more details about what happened.
He had that U-Haul between March 3rd into March 4th in 2020. He drove 133 miles. We heard about that. Everybody who might have seen the trial also would have seen the CMC bag. And there was a demonstrative that was used during trial. It was the exact same type bag. Had light tan, it was canvas, had dark colored straps, and had a CMC logo in the middle. That was positively identified by multiple witnesses as the bag.
Now, we heard this earlier. They're just replaying it. So we'll listen real quick. We don't have a lot longer. And then we can get to those things. That's great. If you're all in to sit here with me, I'll sit here and I'll play the Rebecca Maines, his friend. She is the friend that said that everybody saw the short of, right? The clip that says Adam hated Montgomery, and then we'll listen to the closing for the prosecution because the defense is just terrible. I can't listen to that again. I thought about it, but nobody wants to hear it. It's just trash. As a matter of fact, I think she helped get Adam convicted because it's such trash.
That Adam Montgomery had the last night that he had that bag in the U-Haul. So that bag went somewhere along that route and somewhere within no more than 26 miles off of that route down and back to Revere. Also at this trial, what was pointed out was the fact that Adam Montgomery was from the Revere area. He would know it very well. that is still a high area of interest, and we are still asking for anybody now who has heard this information, who's seen this information. If you see this bag, if you hear about this bag, if you walk in one of these areas, you take the dog out for a walk, if you see anything like that that seems to be disturbed, so please let us know. You heard also at trial that Harmony's body was bagged up several times inside of that CMC bag. There's a high likelihood that there may still be parts of her that we can recover, part of her body, pardon me just for a second, part of her body that we can recover. We're really hoping that we can do that. We really hope that she can get the burial that she deserves, that everybody deserves.
Bobby Chacon, you know, initially this was a search for Harmony Montgomery, and it's her picture that is plastered everywhere. I think all that changes now because we're really looking for this bag. So to me, it's almost like a brand new search for the public at this point. You know, anyone that might come across it just, you know, for whatever reason. What are your thoughts there about is how much of a better chance do you think that gives investigators now that they can release the information and release what this bag looks like?
Oh, I think it's crucial if she's out there where someone can find her. It's crucial. People have to look, you know, for that bag. But if she's out in the elements, if the bag's in the elements, there's going to be degrading of the bag as well. You know, we're all looking at water, and that's what I did. That's all I did really was, and I've recovered dismembered victims underwater. But if he say,
let me ask you this, Bobby, what's the oldest case where you were able to recover remains from someone who was missing?
Probably 7 or 8 years. And then I, like you, just served as a juror in a murder trial here in California. And the victim in our case during the first conviction was not found yet. They found the body, or they found his skull 7 years after the first conviction. I served as a juror on a retrial of that case, but it was 7 years after the conviction that his skull was found by a crew out in the woods digging a trench for some power lines. And then they identified it through DNA. So, you know, you never stop looking, and certainly, you know, things can happen. But in the water, you know, there's degradation that takes place a lot quicker. Even on land, though, in some of these areas, you probably have predation, you know, animal predation taking place if it's not packaged up really well. If he put her in a dumpster and she wound up in a landfill, that's another, you know, a problem, lowering the odds of finding her. So I think this is going to be, as Mike said, a needle in a haystack. But people do have to get out there now that we have a more finite location or geographical area. There's people that are going to be able to get out there and look. Oftentimes hunters find them, or hikers find them, you know, people like that. Or so there's always hope, but this is a long shot at best, I would say.
All right, our experts are staying with us when we come back. More on this search, including something else that was mentioned on this show last night.
That I wouldn't be able to tell. I wouldn't know where she is, so I couldn't tell anybody where she is. Only he would know.
And there's the problem. He's the only one who knows. The only one who knows, and he's holding on to that information. Will he ever reveal it? I don't know. But if he did reveal it, would it make a difference in the search for Harmony Montgomery? I want to bring back in my guests, Bobby Chacon, Mike King, Joseph Scott Morgan, and ask them, Joseph Scott Morgan, do you think if he came clean and said, this is where I put the remains, do you think we investigators could find Harmony?
Very difficult, and this is why. Again, I go back to this idea that you're talking about saltwater marshes, and they, and even the tributaries that are flowing in here, their life, the life in that ecosystem is dictated by the rising and falling of tides. It's a very dynamic environment. When you're walking by, you're taking a stroll along the levee or the dike or whatever. You don't really pay much attention to it, but that water is drawn off and then it comes back in and back out, back in and back out. And it's a very dynamic environment. So even if he says, and we're talking strictly waterborne environment here, even if he says he put her there, it's really hard for me to fathom that after these many 5 years now.
Yeah, close to 5 years.
That her remains would would still be there in that specific location.
Let's take a listen now. On this program 2 nights ago, Judge Carol Erskine, who's taken a look at everything in this case, everything, has her own theory about one place that Adam Montgomery may have disposed of Harmony. Let's take a listen.
This is great. I love that right after the verdict came and he's guilty, that these people are gung-ho to find her body. You see how many people are on this and they're looking for it, and they're really using forensics. They're using their knowledge, and they're using what they know to try to narrow it down. Now, I agree. I don't think that Kayla knows where the body is. I think out of the times that she didn't lie that Adam Montgomery told her, "I'm not going to tell you, because if you ever talk, you'll know." So I do think that, absolutely. I think if she knew, she would have gave them that and got full immunity. Probably they probably would have given her full immunity, but now she doesn't have it. So let's listen to what they say about this.
There's really an indication from law enforcement that he was in the marshy area of Revere. And as everyone points out, it's very remote. Why would he go there? He had lived in that area. But the one thing that no one ever mentions about that area is right on Route 107 at the marsh is the giant Wheelabrator incinerator. And so I always thought to myself, that was never mentioned as part of the search. He waited 3 months to dispose of her body and carried it from place to place. He had many opportunities to dispose of it, whether it's the Merrimack River or to bury those remains somewhere. But instead, he drives to Boston. He drives within that 6-mile radius, and he lands along the marshy area where the giant incinerator dumps ashes into the marsh.
All right, let's take a look at the screen. We've got some pictures so you can kind of see where this is. We mentioned the Rumney Marsh Reservation. You can see where the incinerator is, just to the north. I mean, it's right there. It's right next to the marshes. And we can look even closer up to have an idea of what this whole layout is. Mike King, I think the only issue here might be getting access to inside the incinerator. I don't know if there's places where people leave trash there. I don't know. But how about your thoughts about that and the fact that some of these ashes are then discarded in the marshes in that area?
Yeah, that was really what impressed me last night about the judge's comments, was the idea that is there spillage getting into the ecosystem? And of course, they probably don't want that mentioned, but if that's the case, would that make it more difficult for a cadaver search? And these are kind of some areas I need to lean on Bobby and Joe Scott about. But the idea would be, is there a specific reason to do that? And the only reason would be to further conceal whatever evidence there is in this case. And I think it's got to be pretty darn limited after that series of months in which he was clearly doing something to speed up and move different parts of this child.
Yeah, Bobby, that's, I think the judge's great point that she made was, he held on to her for months and then had a plan and went to a specific area, an area that he is very, very familiar with.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know, like you said, if the public has access to that incinerator, like if they can drop stuff off, and if they do they take any kind of identification, or do they have a plate reader or any kind of surveillance that they can?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I didn't want to interrupt it, but I'm here in California and I don't know anything about anywhere you could take something to an incinerator, especially without people knowing. Like, do you have to go in and say, hey, I need to use the incinerator for this? Or don't you think there'd be cameras at the incinerator? Like, do you have to check in, sign something? I don't understand that. So it's interesting if anybody knows about that. That's great that they narrowed it down to maybe that, but let's listen to him. But I was going to say the same exact thing is, why don't they have some kind of evidence, and maybe do they, and why hasn't it been brought up yet?
Access on whether he was there or not, because quite frankly, if she was incinerated and then the ashes are kind of distributed out into the water, there's a very small likelihood that she'll ever be found. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's absolutely ghoulish when you start thinking about, Kayla had that bag between her two kids in a stroller as she's pushing it along. He brought that into the restaurant where he worked several times and put it to the walk-in cooler. This guy is just that second level of that level of evil that, you just come across once in a while that you just shake your head at. Like, why was he carrying her remains around and doing the things he was doing with it? And so, I hope he somehow finds faith in jail and tells them where he found her, or maybe before between now and sentencing, if he thinks that it could maybe impact his sentencing, he might come forward with it. I don't know, but this is going to be a very difficult task.
Yeah. The other part, Joseph Scott Morgan, is if in fact, this marsh area is particularly disturbed by these ashes and whatever's happening near this incinerator, which makes it even gunkier in there. And maybe that's something he knew about growing up in the area, that, oh yeah, those marshes over there, no one's going to find anything there.
Yeah, but there's two sides to that coin as well. If it is, like you say, gunky, if it's thick, that might be a saving grace, I suppose. That in some way her remains could be retained in that area. But I still go back to this idea that if her remains are recovered, first off, there's probably going to be little or no soft tissue left. It's going to be, I'm not going to go there, but there's not going to be a lot.
So what I do have to say about this, and I like how he said I'm not going to get into that. So this rabbit hole that is really slippery, the good news is that there are people working on it. It's not just speculation, right? There are people that are actually out there looking in the water, checking out the incinerator, talking to the people, and probably more than we even know. So, when we get into other cases, any other cases, but Delphi comes to mind because that's a crazy rabbit hole. All of the speculation, and is it Ron Logan, and is it this? I mean, if somebody really got in there and just went one by one with each person and said, okay, let's look at his phone records and look at his pings and eliminate him and eliminate this guy and they could actually do that with forensics and all the other things that are used. Now, it would cost a lot of money. It would take resources, but it wouldn't just be speculation. And it sounds here like they're speculating in order to narrow down the search that they're going to do. So this is great.
Remaining, you'll still have skeletal remains. I think my big thing is I want to know if they were able to recover the remains. What are those remains going to tell us? First off, we'd want her identified, obviously. I think all of us want that. But secondly, we've heard about these strikes on her person, on her body, that little fragile angel that it makes me want to weep right now. She's blind, Vinnie. And I still think, will that head trauma still be visible after all this amount of time? Let's say that we do get an intact skeletal remain contained in those bags. That's going to be a big question there, I think, for me.
All right. We are out of time for tonight. A big thank you to Chacon, Mike King, and Joseph Scott Morgan.
All right, so we're all done with that. That was great. I love the I love the evidence that they use, the science, the forensics, the actual police talking about it, and I can easily come in and weigh in with it. And a lot of things that I'm saying before they even say it, so I like that because it validates it. And yeah, Wolfpack, there's so much, I'm going to just say, there's so much fuckery with the Delphi case that it does give my brain cramps too. However, I'm able to decipher all the stuff and kind of look at each person and I delve into it a little bit and I say, it's not this. I'm going to throw this out. This kind of makes sense. I'm going to put this here. So it's kind of a puzzle. And for me, it's not that it's easy to solve, but it's easy for me to decipher bullshit from real shit. And that's kind of what I do. That's kind of what I'm doing here. That's why I started a channel, because I love true crime. And I've seen lots of people that are guilty of crime. And I've seen the cases as they go, and I'm able to decipher what the bullshit is from the other shit. And then I watch it all the way through. So it definitely validates for me what my gut feelings and how my research goes before, that I actually am not just making stuff up in my head, that it's actually correct. So hearing these things validates the truth. And I can't wait until the truth comes out for next Delphi. I also can't wait for the Brian Kohberger case. Lori Vallow, we already know what's going to happen with that. She's crazy. Chad Daybell, I absolutely can't wait to hear how he throws Vallow under the bus. Man, it's just so many trials coming up. So now, everybody that's in here, thank you. I'm going to definitely timestamp all of this later. So if you don't want to sit there and listen to it anymore, I hope you do. This is great, but I'm going to go ahead and do the Rebecca Maines testifying, so you can see how she messes with the defense and what the things that she says, because she's a former friend of Adam Montgomery. Then I'm going to do the closing argument. I kind of went backwards, right? This is like when you watch a horror movie, you watch part 1, part 2, and then part 3, they go back. So I'm going back, and I am going to take this back in time now that we know that he's guilty, and now we're waiting for sentencing. So if you want to stay here, hit the like button. I will definitely timestamp this for everybody, and you can watch what you want and watch what you don't want, or don't watch what you don't want to watch. That's fine with me. But I'm hanging out with you all on a Saturday. It's 4:00. I've been here for a while, and I'm good. I'm good to go. So let's keep going, everybody. I'm in.
And just to get this out point in time, okay? Ms. Maines, because we're being recorded here today, would you please state your full name and spell both your first name and your last name for the record?
Yeah, my name is Rebecca, Rebecca, and my last name is Maines, Maines.
And Ms. Maines, you reside in New Hampshire, correct?
I do.
How long have you been a New Hampshire resident?
49 years.
49 years. Currently, it's my understanding that you're staying at the New Hampshire State Prison for Women. Is that correct?
I am back on a parole violation, yes.
Okay. And what is your anticipated release date?
April 15th.
And just to get this out of the way, with regards to previous convictions that you've had, it's my understanding you've had convictions for a series of theft by unauthorized takings and one count of credit card fraud, all between 2016 and 2019. Is that correct?
That is correct.
During that time period between 2016 and 2019, what were you battling with?
I'm a heroin addict.
And how long have you been in recovery?
10 months today.
Congratulations on that. With regards to your work history prior to using heroin, what sort of jobs did you hold?
I was in the medical field.
And what did you do in the medical field?
I was a nurse.
Do you know a person by the name of Adam Montgomery?
I do.
Okay. Where did you first meet Adam Montgomery?
I met him in Manchester in 2022. We were both part of the sober community.
Sober community?
Correct.
I can approach the witness, please. I'm going to show you what's Memory Stakes Exhibit 101. I see that you're nodding your head. Do you
It's
recognize
Adam.
this person?
It's Adam.
I just caught that and I was going to say something. She was a freaking nurse. That's rough. That happens a lot, by the way. We did Dr. Death, the first one, and a lot of doctors actually get addicted to opioids and things. So heroin is the closest thing that you can get to opioids. And so this poor lady that was a nurse got addicted to heroin. I don't judge her at all.
That's it. Montgomery.
It is.
And back in, did you meet him back in 2021?
21. Yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
How would you describe your relationship? How much did you spend time together?
Every day.
Every day.
I would have called him my best friend.
Did you have a car at that time?
I did.
And what kind of car was it?
It was a 2017 Ford Fusion.
And do you know whether the defendant had a car at that time?
He did not.
You said that you were best friends. Would you ever travel together?
We did.
Okay. And what town did you grow up in?
Portsmouth.
Did you ever take him to Portsmouth?
No, Hampton.
Hampton.
Was the furthest.
Okay. And what town did he grow up in?
I want to say Lynn, Massachusetts. I know it's down. It's Revere. I believe it's Revere. I know it's down in that area.
Okay. Did you ever talk with him about his children, how many children he has?
Yes.
Okay. What, if anything, did he ever tell you about how many children he had?
Well, I'm pretty sure I told you guys 5, but thinking about it, I know he had 4.
You know he had 4?
Correct.
And when you say you guys, are you referring to investigators?
When I spoke with the state, yes.
Okay.
With you and.
About to say, this is not the first time you and I've met, is it?
No, it is not.
Okay. And where did we meet?
At the New Hampshire State Prison for Women.
And what did we talk about that day?
We talked about my statement.
Okay. And do you remember what you were told to do when you were testifying?
Yes.
Okay. What were the 3 rules of testifying that we talked about?
Speak loud, tell the truth. And I don't remember.
Okay.
Stare at you guys.
Let's say, does it sound like one of the other things was to make sure you use your own words and whatever your testimony is?
Yes.
Now, pay attention, everybody. She's talking to the state right now, and she's laughing and giggling, and she's really nice with them. Now, when they go to the defense, let's see how different she is.
Sorry.
All right. It's all right. At the time in 2021, did you ever talk with Adam Montgomery about a daughter named Harmony?
I did.
Okay. Where did he say she was living in 2021 when you talked with him?
He told me that he dropped her off to her mother in 2019 at a rest area.
What did he say about how often he was seeing her back in 2021?
He said her mother would not allow him to see her and that he had been trying for some time.
What, if anything, did he say to you about her having any sort of toilet problems or bathroom issues before she went to live with her mother?
He said she was constantly wetting her pants or using the bathroom. He put her in the corner in her soiled pants. But that she would repeat it when she'd get in the car. She'd have an accident, but he said it was on purpose.
On purpose?
Yes.
That's what he said?
Correct.
What did he say about why he decided to send Harmony back to her mother?
Because she continually shit her pants. Sorry.
That's okay. Are those his words?
Yes.
Okay. Then those are his words. Remember, one of the things is to make sure that you always tell the truth, correct? You just took an oath a moment ago to tell the truth.
She looks like she's going to cry. She's so upset, like everybody else in this
With
case.
regards, again, to his words, did he ever tell you about a physical incident between himself and Harmony?
He did.
What did he say in his words that you recall?
So he told me that he was in the bathroom, or the kids were in the bathroom. I don't remember the circuit, but he was in the bathroom and he had walked out to find Harmony with her hands over the baby's mouth and nose, and that the baby was not breathing and turning blue. And he said he saw red and he just backhanded her.
So he told you that he backhanded her.
Correct.
And when she was holding her hand over, you said the baby's mouth, did he tell you which baby, which of his other children?
You know what he did, but I don't remember. I want to say Declan, but I'm not 100% positive.
Don't want you to guess. So if you remember, you remember. And if you don't, you don't. That's okay. Do you remember the name of the child that he was talking about, the baby?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Declan.
Okay. And did he say where he was living when he hit Harmony in the mouth after seeing her cover this child's mouth?
Probably. I don't recall.
Don't recall. Okay. Did you say when it was? Specifically when in the year? Spring, summer,
No,
fall,
it was right
winter?
before he returned Harmony to her mother.
Right before?
If you all notice, everybody's pretty consistent on not only what they're saying, but the actual verbiage that Adam uses over and over and over. So I can see how the jury came to a guilty verdict as quick as they did. Although I got to admit, there's a lot of polls going on out there on court TV, Law and Crime, other people's channels. And I thought they would come back in like 3 hours, like the Murdoch case. So I can imagine, it was like 2 weeks of testimony and 7 hours. It was about 7 hours, but everybody's saying the same thing.
Did he, let me ask you, did you ever give him a ride to Maine?
I did not give him a ride.
Okay, so you did not give him a ride to Maine.
No.
All right. Do you know what state he was living in at the end of 2021?
Yes, he was in Maine.
Do you know who he was living
He
with?
was living with Kelsey.
Did you ever meet Kelsey?
She again is one of my really good friends.
And what was Kelsey's last name?
Small.
Finally, with regards to what the defendant stated to you about Harmony, what, if anything, did he ever say, or I'm sorry, who, if anyone, did he ever say Harmony reminded him of?
Her mother.
Her mother?
Her mother.
And did he tell you how that made him feel? God bless you.
He said he hated her right to his core.
Good morning, Ms. Maines.
Good morning.
I believe we met briefly just a few minutes ago, but again, I'm Jamie Brooks, and I represent Mr. Montgomery. I'm also going to be asking you some questions.
Okay.
And I
Here we go.
want to begin by asking you about your criminal record, specifically your convictions between 2014 and 2019.
Okay.
You have 11 separate felony convictions?
Probably. I was a drug addict.
And along with that 11, you have 7 separate misdemeanor convictions, right? For
Probably.
credit card fraud?
Probably.
Specifically, just to dive into the details a bit, 2014, theft, Rockingham County, correct?
Correct. I'm going to agree with you on all these charges. I don't know that we need to go through all of them.
2016,
I like that.
Theft,
I'm a criminal, sir. Yes.
Rockingham County.
Yeah.
Yep, I did it.
2016, theft by deception, Rockingham County.
If you say so. I am a criminal.
2016, 3 separate convictions for felony level theft out of Merrimack County.
If you say so. I don't have the documentation in front of me. I don't need it either. I am a criminal. I don't have a problem telling you that.
2017, theft, Merrimack, right?
Yeah.
2018, another theft, felony level out of Merrimack.
Yep.
2018, a theft out of Merrimack.
I believe it was all the same incident, correct?
Would you like to see the charges?
No.
With different docket numbers?
No. I'm telling you I'm a criminal. I don't know why that would make a difference.
And you also have 2 theft convictions out of Rockingham County in 2019.
I did it all. Doesn't matter. Come on, move forward, guy. All she wants to do is just talk about Harmony and get justice for Harmony. Stop asking.
You indicated on direct examination that you were with Adam for a couple of months.
Yes.
Beginning around August of 2019?
Correct.
Or my apologies, August of 2021.
2021, I'm sorry, yes.
And you and Adam were together essentially every day?
Right up until I moved back to the seacoast.
You considered him a best friend?
I would have, yes.
He ended up moving to Maine to be with Kelsey Small, correct?
Well, he ended up going there, yes.
You were the one who introduced Adam and Kelsey in the first place?
I was.
Does this guy not know what he's talking about or what right now? I'm a little confused why he's rustling papers. Just
I want to
get
talk
to it
with you a bit about your current legal situation. You indicated that you are eligible to be released on parole in April.
Correct.
In a couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also fair to say that that is not the extent of your legal troubles, correct?
Correct.
You are presently facing 3 sets of charges out of 3 separate counties, correct?
Actually, it's 4.
There's a 4th?
Yes.
Okay.
Tell him about it. Tell him all the stuff you did and shut him up.
Let's start with Merrimack County.
None of these I've been convicted of, so they're none I would.
Yeah, let's talk about Harmony.
These
I think I have the legal right to that.
I'm not going to ask you about the specifics, but I am going to ask you about the fact that you are in fact presently being charged with.
I'm not facing any more time, sir. I'm not doing any more time.
Well, let's talk about that. You are.
She just told you she doesn't
Class
want
B
to.
felony offense out of Merrimack County. Correct.
I don't know if
No.
it's for possession of crack cocaine. I believe it's going to be a misdemeanor.
You have 2 counts of possession
I
out
do.
of Merrimack County. Correct.
Do I? No, I don't believe so.
What about Harmony?
Are you familiar with a document called a case summary?
Yes.
Would looking at that case summary assist you in knowing what you're charged with?
Yeah. I actually.
What is with this guy? I feel like this has been the Like the whole case has been like this. They don't know what they're talking about. They rustled the papers. It's like they forgot their questions. Like, come on. I mean, why did we even spend the money on this trial if we're going to do this kind of stuff? It's outrageous. Let's get to it, guys. Like,
Having reviewed that, does that help refresh your recollection?
No, I was only aware of one.
But you are in fact facing two.
Apparently you say so, yes.
And those are two. I'll be happy to take that back unless you need to look at it again.
No, I don't need it. I don't have a problem telling you that.
So in Merrimack County alone, you are still presently facing 2 charges carrying a maximum penalty of 3.5 to 7 years in prison.
Yes.
And there is a second court, correct?
Yes.
And that's Rockingham County Superior Court.
Yes.
And out of Rockingham County Superior Court, you're facing an A felony offense.
I am.
That carries a maximum penalty itself of 7.5 to 15 years.
Yes.
You also have a charge right here out of this very court, correct?
I do.
Itself a Class B felony.
Mhm.
Itself punishable by up to 3.5 to 7 years.
It is.
okay. And
And you indicated that there's a fourth?
I'm correct. Out of Bedford, I have possession of crack cocaine.
but they're not giving her a deal.
When did that
So
charge come about?
shut up.
I was arrested on August 12th of 2022.
That would also be a felony level offense?
It is a misdemeanor.
Okay.
She just
Acts
said
prohibited.
that.
Or notes.
And even though you're scheduled for release in April on the sentence you're presently serving, those charges are all still pending.
They are still pending, yes.
And there is an additional problem as well, right? In each of those 3 cases, you failed to appear for court.
I did. And that's not a problem at all. I was in treatment, sir.
You were on the lam,
I was in treatment, sir.
absconded from your parole.
I was in, I was in treatment, sir.
Yet your parole did not know you were in treatment and a warrant was issued.
Apparently
I believe I've
not.
answered that question. And they did know where I was. But thank you.
And you would agree that failing to appear for court is itself also potentially a crime.
It is a crime, yes.
Bail jumping.
I was not charged with bail jumping, sir.
You haven't been charged with bail jumping yet since being arrested.
I was in treatment, sir, and I'm pretty sure that I verified that through the courts, and each of them know.
I want to change topics.
Yes, please. Change topics because this is going nowhere.
Adam fought for 4 years to get Harmony.
Adam fought for 4 years? I mean, if you say so.
You don't recall telling the police that?
I didn't tell the police he fought for 4 years.
She looks pissed.
Let's talk about, you indicated something about standing in a corner.
I did.
She would stand in a corner and poop. Is that something that you said?
I said that she used the bathroom in her pants and he put her in the corner.
Okay. So we're not talking about the car.
No, I'm not. I didn't say anything about the car.
Okay. So this is something that would occur when they were living in a home or an apartment or something.
Correct.
It's like this guy didn't practice before he brought her up. He didn't know what he was talking about.
So, Ms. Maines, on direct examination, it was elicited that you have met with the state before, correct?
I did, yes.
And one of those times that you met with the state was when you were in prison.
Yes.
And that was January 4th of 2023.
Probably.
But it was another time that you were incarcerated. You since got out.
Yes.
During some point of 2023, and now you're back.
Correct.
Okay. You recall being interviewed by a Detective Dunleavy?
I was, yes.
And you were wanting to get out of your situation, correct?
No.
You were in prison.
So
You
I
wanted to
was on
stay
there
in
on
prison?
parole. Nothing you can do can help me with parole, sir.
Do you
I
recall
love her.
telling Detective Dunleavy that you wanted to have a recorded telephone conversation with Mr. Montgomery?
No, that I wanted to have a recorded conversation? Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. You never told Detective Dunleavy that.
No. I actually told him I wanted to see him in person.
Well, you did say that too. You wanted to go and visit Adam at Valley Street Jail, right?
I have been in contact with him while he has been incarcerated, sir.
At the time, Adam was at Valley Street Jail when you were at the Women's State Prison in January of 2023.
Correct.
And you told Detective Dunleavy, I would like to go and visit him at Valley Street.
I did. Adam was a really good friend of mine.
But you also told him that you couldn't do it by yourself, right?
I will never see Adam again because I'm a criminal, sir, which means I can't get into the jails or the prisons.
You told Detective Dunleavy that you would like to go.
You know, this guy is ridiculous because he's actually going to help the prosecution. He's establishing that she was Adam's best friend, that she still likes him, that she wanted to see him in person. And so now whatever she says, if it's negative against Adam, people are going to believe her because she has no reason to lie about him because she still likes him and she's friends with him, best friends with him. So, I mean, this is like the whole time the narrative of the defense. All right, I'll keep going.
Go and visit Adam at the prison, but you needed their help to do so, right?
No. I needed their help? Absolutely not.
Being incarcerated, you would agree that you would not be able to get to Valley Street on your own, right?
Correct.
You would have to be released with the assistance of the police.
No, absolutely. I was on parole, sir. You don't get to be released just because the police said so.
You told the police that you had nothing to lose?
What? I want to see that.
I love her.
Because I'd never said that.
While we're on the topic, at the very end of the conversation with Detective Dunleavy asked, is there any, do you have anything else for us? And your response was, I can tell you all about drugs, right?
No, absolutely not.
No doubt in your mind?
I was there for one reason, sir.
Fair to say that you wanted
Actually,
to
I was there
improve
for
your
two
legal
reasons.
situation.
The second reason was a personal reason, but we never spoke. The drug issue was on a personal reason, but it had nothing to do with Adam, and it had nothing to do with, it had to do with a sexual assault.
It had nothing to do with Adam, but it still had something to do with possibly improving your legal situation.
It did not. Nothing will improve my legal situation but myself.
Nothing's going to improve her situation, guys. Have you heard that? Like, for the umpteenth time? This defense has no idea what they're doing at all.
I have nothing further at this time.
If I could please, just to briefly clarify this.
With regards to your testimony here today,
Mm-hmm.
do you have any promises with the state about what's going to happen to your other charges based upon how you testify today?
Not at all.
Have you ever asked for any promises from the state in exchange for your testimony here today?
I have not.
You stated a moment ago on cross-examination that you said, I'm never going to be able to see him again. Can you please explain to the jury why, as somebody who's on parole or as a convicted felon, you're not going to be able to speak with him again? With somebody like him.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, I could never go to Valley Street because I've been to Valley Street. I did some time there, and you are not allowed to go to a jail that you have been to. Secondly, the prison. You have to be 10 years with no arrests, no convictions, 10 years when you've been outside the prison. And at this time, I definitely can't say that I've done that.
Let me ask you also, you were asked about meeting with the state, and then you were asked about a meeting in January 4th of 2023. On your meeting recently with the state, on that meeting, did you meet with myself and Attorney Knowles?
I did.
Okay. And was that recent, just before this trial began?
It was, I think, 2, maybe 3 Fridays ago.
Maybe 3 Fridays ago. So we put it.
So the defense accomplished nothing. I don't know if any of you heard this or listened to all of it before, or you listen to it now, but nothing that the defense asked her helped any bit for Adam at all. If anything, it just established that she's good friends with Adam and that she wouldn't say anything bad unless it was true.
In January of 2024. Is that right?
That is right.
And yet you were also asked about meeting with Detective Dunleavy. What year did that meeting take place?
Well, that was in 2022. And actually, I didn't even know he was coming. I was scheduled to meet with Manchester PD's sexual assault.
So that is a different matter, a
Correct.
different time, and a different meeting.
Correct.
So when counsel a moment ago said that you met with the state prior to trial, these are 2 different meetings with 2 different groups of people in 2 different agencies, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Finally, with regards to the criminal record that defense counsel went through, was the defendant aware of your criminal record?
Absolutely.
Okay. And you were still friends with him, right?
I was still friends with him. I actually have not been charged with any new charges in quite some time for myself.
Okay.
I've been clean and sober and working on myself, which is what I plan to do when I get out. The same exact thing.
Understandable. With regards to also when you were asked about the defendant talking about this pooping incident, that Harmony would do this on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to clarify with regards to the timing. You were asked a moment ago whether that happened while Adam was in a car. Did
We
the
were on our
defendant?
way back from Medway, Massachusetts.
So that's what you meant by in the car,
Correct.
not that the incident occurred in the car.
Correct.
And correct me with regards to your testimony on direct. Didn't you say on direct that it was after these incidents and this backhand incident, that's when he decided to bring her back to her mother?
It was the I was told in the time of Thanksgiving 2019.
Thanksgiving 2019.
Correct.
Okay.
He put her in the car and met her mother,
And who was it that told you that?
Adam Montgomery.
Thank you. No further questions at this time, Your Honor. Thank you, Ms. Maines.
Thank you.
So, Ms. Maines, I do want to clarify. It's your testimony that when you met with Detective Dunleavy, January of last year, 2023, you were not trying to offer new ways to try and get information from Adam so as to improve your situation and get out of prison?
I was on a parole violation, sir. I got all of my time suspended. I didn't need your help to get out. All of my time was suspended upon entry into a program.
At the time that you had this this interview with Detective Dunleavy, there was your parole situation, but you were facing the very same 3 charges that you're facing now, correct?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and we don't need to rehash them all again,
Yeah.
but it was the Merrimack
Actually, it was
charge.
4, but
That's right, out of Bedford.
correct.
Okay, so those charges were all still
Sorry,
pending
I
then.
just want to be honest. They are still pending. They were still pending then.
Okay, and again, what you're saying is that Adam told you that he had backhanded Harmony after she had her hand over, you think, Declan's mouth?
He did, yes.
And this was around Thanksgiving.
No, he returned her to her mother around Thanksgiving of 2019.
And that's what prompted her to do so, or him
That-
to do so.
It was an incident that we had spoken about coming home from Medway, yes.
And that's what prompted him to send her back to her mother.
Correct. He said that he just wanted to make sure that she had the proper care.
All right, ma'am, you are excused.
Thank you.
Any objection to her being excused? Without objection. Just please be careful of the
Yes.
wires. State may call its next witness.
Oh boy, that was hard to listen to. And hello, True Crime Investigates, Anthony Greeno. We all know him, I'm sure. A lot of you came from either Zap Girl or True Crime Investigates with Anthony Greeno. And yeah, spending the last 7 years of your life working on Delphi, I commend you. Had I spent the last 7 minutes working on Delphi, it would drive me nuts. Anytime I hear new information about it, oh boy, it actually makes me mad hearing all of the conspiracy theories. And I try to follow your lead, Greeno, because I appreciate the way you can bring people on your channel like Delphi After Dark and what was the gentleman's name? I think it started with an S. I can't remember his name right now, but he was on your channel last night doing open panel, and he is completely all in for it not being Richard Allen. So let's take True Crime Investigates and Anthony Greeno as an example that we can agree. Sterling, yes, it was Sterling, that we can agree to disagree with somebody and still have them on our channel, still promote what they do, still have other people, direct them there so we can all see everything and then make your own decision. So yeah, we had True Crime Investigates doing an open panel, and it'd be great if he does it tonight. I'll be there if he does it tonight. It's only 4:30 here, and we're going to listen to the closing statements only by the state, because the other one's just weak and pathetic, and it didn't help at all, and it will make me fall asleep. So anyway, yeah, let's all take that into consideration as I'm moving forward here, that I can agree to disagree with people. And especially on that Delphi case, when you have guys like Sterling and Delphi After Dark, Rich Ney, completely different theory, and answering them nicely and saying what you say without bashing them. So I respect that highly. Keep doing what you do, Greeno. I'll keep doing what I do. And hopefully we can come together and collaborate on at some point with other things. That'd be great. Let's listen to the state close and listen how powerful this is and why the guilty verdict came down on Adam Montgomery. Many reasons, but this was a big one. Let's listen and watch together if you haven't already, or rewatch it.
Weeks, you have been incredibly attentive, and we are very, very appreciative of that. One of the things you heard just a moment ago from Attorney Smith was that she doesn't get the opportunity to come back up here and talk again. That's true. It's called taking turns. It's something that parents teach children. At the beginning, state has to go first, defendant has to go second. At the closings, defendant has to go first, state has to go second. Something very simple that parents teach children. One of the other things that they should teach is, if you're going to quote the defendant, if you're going to quote a witness, you have to make sure that you're accurate. So I'll apologize in advance, but let's quote people accurately. I fucked up. Again and again and again. I fucked up. I fucked up. That's what the defendant, his language that he used when he told Travis Beach at the night he got the U-Haul, the night that he disappeared Harmony's body, to whatever place it is now, where he knows it is right now, to this day, his words, I fucked up. Not she, not we, not Kayla. I fucked up. Singular, personal, solo. That's the defendant's words. Defense counsel got up here in openings and said that you'd hear evidence that Adam Montgomery was out in the middle of the night doing his business when something happened and Harmony died. If that were so, the defendant never would have told Travis Beach, I fucked up. Adam Montgomery was no loving, caring parent, but an enraged tyrant who had no business being around young Harmony. So together, let's look at the actual evidence, the actual quotes of what you saw and heard as we look at all of the charges that you're going to deliberate on that encapsulate what the defendant did do, and talk about the evidence that you've seen tells you what he committed. And we'll start first with what the defendant's telling you in opening arguments, and now that you can and should find him guilty of abuse of a corpse and falsifying physical evidence. Let's set that as the baseline. Let's start there. Let's see what that actually means before we look at how he committed each one of the crimes charged, not just the ones that he feels are going to distract you from the rest of the nightmare that he's responsible for. Who carried Harmony's body away from the broken down car in the duffel bag, hid her outside of Colonial Village while they stayed in Anthony Badero's blue Audi for 2 nights, put Harmony under a ramp and then in a van, and then in this cooler for weeks at Christina Lubin's house, into the CMC bag, into the walk-in cooler at Portland Pie Company, in the fridge, in the freezer, defrosted her in the shower, consolidated her body yet again, brought her to the Econo Lodge, tricked his friend into renting him the U-Haul, and then dumped her body somewhere. All to make sure that the evidence that could have been brought before you that shows that he's responsible for having murdered her would never be found. And he says you can and should find him guilty of those 2 crimes, of abuse of a corpse and falsifying physical evidence for this. He doesn't just, the defense said all of that in their openings, that the defendant did both of these 2 bolded things. Since day 2 of this trial, opening arguments, you should then consider not only all of the testimony, but also all of the corroborating testimony about all of those charges, those 2, falsifying physical and abuse of a corpse, to be true. So let's make it very, very painfully clear from the indictments that you're going to be considering for falsifying physical evidence and abuse of a corpse, making this Harmony fit.
You know what's good about the closing here? And anytime they did something, they had visuals. So the visuals were great for the jury, right? Because I don't think, and someone could correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think they were able to take notes. Now, some states do, and some juries do, but I don't think these ones were. And when I was listening to anything from the defense, I couldn't understand what they were saying completely, and I couldn't keep track. It was like just pieces everywhere, a piece here, a piece there. They go back and what, and so these guys are just killing it.
Into this and disappearing her body in the condition that it could not be found for a trial like this one. The evidence was there. And the defendant's counsel professed to you that he's not disputing that, not saying he didn't commit these crimes. So you can check these two off the list. And with that, you got to remember the defendant gets no credit for this. He says that you can and should find him guilty of these, but he's not taking responsibility for them. He hasn't admitted anything. He's not taking responsibility for anything that he did. His argument to you is not because he's taking responsibility. It's tactical. He admits what he can't deny. And he denies what he can't afford to admit. He cannot deny each and every single one of these facts that were presented to you. That she died on the 7th, that he brought her in a duffel bag to Colonial Village, stored her under a deck, into a red cooler, in the closet it fit, in the ceiling it built. It's her blood in the ceiling at the Fit Shelter at 177 Lake Ave. And his fingerprints in the ceiling. Remember? Left-handed prints in the ceiling. The only other person being poor Mr. Mondrag, the drywall installer. Into the CMC bag to the Portland Pie Company. Over to Union Street, consolidating her body even more, bringing her into the Econo Lodge, tricking Travis Beach, and dumping her body so it wouldn't be found. The argument that the defendant is making, he had to make. His concessions don't mean he's taken responsibility for these crimes. It doesn't mean that he's a man of principle or restraint, nor does it give his argument any credibility that because I concede all of this, well, the rest of it must not be true. The whole thing's true. And he's taken responsibility for none of this. So again, baseline, first things first, before we move on, these two charges and the charges that his counsel argue you can and should find him guilty of, they're there. That's done. And that's the tip of the iceberg. It's all of the charges, every single one of them has been proven by evidence, not emotion, beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is the man who did all of these things. And that's because you saw the evidence. You went on The View. You saw witnesses take this stand and put themselves before you. And you looked them in the eye. And the same common sense that you use every day to tell whether somebody is feeding you a lion, a bull, or not, you used with those witnesses. And because of that, you know that this is true. Because you heard from people like Kevin Montgomery, Nick Ahern, Katie Moran, all talking about the defendant telling them in July about the worst thing he had ever done up until that point. You heard from Kayla, 2 days from Kayla, and all of the other witnesses that corroborate her, how he beat Harmony, this 35-pound child. Remember, Nurse Travers told you that she was measured just back in June before the July incident occurred.
35 pounds.
5 years old.
What?
35 pounds. And you heard from all those witnesses, especially Kayla, about why he beat Harmony to death, when he beat Harmony, and how he beat Harmony. And you vetted what she had to say. And you saw the rest of the injuries that he incurred, and all of that was corroborated by the other evidence presented. Corroborated in ways that we'll explore that the witness never could have possibly known there was other evidence out there that supported them. Not when the defendant started telling investigators what happened and how the defendant beat the life out of Harmony. And then beat and manipulated and controlled Kayla afterwards to make sure that she stuck to the story so he would not be held accountable and the evidence of his crimes would not be found. So when he says that you can find him guilty of these, understand that these two are but a part of the whole of his criminality, of how he murdered Harmony as well. When he said this to Travis Beach, It wasn't for part of that. It was for the whole of taking Harmony's life and beyond. Don't forget what he's saying that you ought to convict him on as well. That the falsifying physical evidence and that the abuse of orbs are unto themselves evidence of the crime of murder. He's a murderer. That's getting rid of evidence. That's what murderers do. They get rid of evidence that would show others what they'd done. They think no body, no evidence, no conviction. They silence witnesses into staying silent or even perjuring themselves so that the witnesses don't tell others what the murderer did.
Excellent visuals.
Because murderers don't want to be held accountable for their actions.
Excellent.
Murderers want to get rid of the evidence. They don't mind abusing the body so that the evidence of how their victim was murdered can never be found or used against them.
They definitely abuse
They clean
the body.
bathrooms with ammonia after they get rid of the evidence, like this defendant did. They clean out the plumbing lines, like this defendant wanted to do. They desecrate and hide the dead so that the body cannot tell the story of how they died to the living. That's what murderers do. That's what the defendant did. Because he's a murderer too. Now, let's really start now. Let's start and talk about what he did first to Harmony. Excuse me. Let's talk about what happened in June. Let's talk about the second-degree assault. You will likely never forget Kevin Montgomery's testimony as he was sitting up here, taking his time to thoroughly make sure he answered truthfully and recalled to the best of his recollection. And you are never going to forget how he described Harmony's face when he flew home from Florida, having been there in July, come back on the 22nd to see Harmony in the house in the kitchen. And we saw him relive that moment for us, admitting that he asked her, quote, "Oh my God, Harmony," or "Oh my fucking God, Harmony, what did you do to your face?" End quote. And how he told us Adam answered the question, not Harmony.
15 minutes for Greeno's thing. Hopefully it lasts a while because I'm committed to watch this with everybody and then I'll either rewatch. Thanks, Carly, for letting us know. Thanks, Greeno, for stopping by. And anybody that's already watched this, man, this is great, right? It's powerful. This is a huge reason why Adam Montgomery was found guilty.
Adam did. She didn't do anything. I bashed her around the fucking house. That's not disciplining a child. That's not pulling her away or jerking her and not protecting someone else. If it had been, the defendant never would have said this when Kevin asked Harmony what happened, would he? Kevin Montgomery told you he was subpoenaed to be here. He did not want to testify against his nephew. And you saw it on his face that he remembered what the defendant said he did. Not Harmony answering the question. The defendant answered it for her. And remember how Kevin said the defendant said this. Another moment, probably not going to forget. When I asked Kevin about how the defendant said he bashed her around the house, Kevin, you'll recall, said, quote, "like a cocky son of a bitch."
Super cocky.
Nick Ahern told us he saw that black eye and how bad it was. And what did the defendant do?
Visuals.
Lied to him. Nick told us how the defendant told him that it was from an injury from playing soccer. Nick told you he only saw it for what? How many seconds? 4 seconds. Only saw it for 4 seconds. Saw how bad it was. He described it as being pretty intense, that it was concerning to him. And that the defendant let her be outside for all of 4 seconds before the defendant told her to get back inside. And what did Harmony do? She obeyed. Nick saw him walk Harmony right back through the front door and then shut it.
Man,
So
he's
why did Nick hide Harmony away that day?
freaking
Because he couldn't let
killing
a
it.
5-year-old outside on a summer day, could he? Not when her face showed the mark of the assault that he had delivered on her. Shows everyone in the neighborhood, along with Nick, evidence of what the defendant did to her. Katie Morin told us that the defendant used other words to describe that day and what he did, besides bashing her around the house. Did she say a jerk? Did she say a grab? Did she say a yank? She did not. The defendant told her it was, quote, the worst thing I'd ever done, end quote. And that he had supposedly backhanded her. That tells you that the defendant knew how badly he beat Harmony that day in July, that the defendant called it to Katie Morin the worst thing that he had ever done. And the evidence from the multiple people who saw how bad this was and who heard the defendant describe either inflicting it upon her or hiding her. Don't forget, we also have Demetrios Saros. When he first went to the house, was he able to see Harmony? He told you. Only from feet away, as the defendant was hurrying up and getting Harmony in the car and driving her out of there.
You know, Adam Montgomery, he pled to most of this stuff. He pled to most of these charges, Jennifer, and it does make me sick and it hurts my heart. He pled to all of this, moving the body and doing this, and he pled to a lot of that stuff. The only thing he didn't plead guilty to is actually taking her life away from her at that very moment. But it is very sickening because he freaking pled to it.
And even a week later, when he finally does get to see Harmony, she still has a mark on her face. Finally, you've also got Kayla Montgomery, who told you she overheard the defendant's conversation with Kevin Montgomery and then confronted him because he told her it was from a lightsaber that one of the boys had been swinging around and Harmony got hit in the face. And she confronted him about it and said, "You said it was from a lightsaber." He said, "Yeah, no. What I said to Kevin was correct." He admits that he lied to her before when he told Kayla that Harmony got hit by a lightsaber. More evidence that corroborates that what Kevin said happened. His conversation with Adam, where Adam admitted to hitting Harmony in July, did happen. Simply put, from multiple witnesses, from the defendant's multiple confessions, he committed the crime of second-degree assault on a 5-year-old in July of 2019. And of that, there is simply no doubt. That being said, now we can move on. Who and where and why Harmony was killed? Let's go through what the evidence showed us, one thing at a time. We saw that it was not alone with Kayla, not in the Colonial Village parking lot in the middle of the night where Adam had gone to go do his business. Not that it was something that you heard that had happened. It was the defendant in the car on the morning of the 7th with his fists. And it was cold. We know it was cold. So cold that Padero's car died that night when they moved over into the Audi. Adam wrote to Matt Gendron, remember, that they were freezing. Cold enough so that Kim Frayne went and gave them the battery pack to help give them the jump start. So we know it must have been cold enough that day that blankets in the back of a car did not appear out of place. Kayla told us how the accidents were happening. And yes, something had happened the night before, but she told you the night before was when the defendant first hit her. Why? For another accident that Harmony had had in the car. An accident that Kayla did nothing about. An accident that the defendant did nothing about and told Kayla to let Harmony lie in it. Kayla told you what it smelled like, and she told you to your face that she still did nothing about it. And in the morning, things were still the same. Kayla described for you how it started up again. It was still dark outside. She told you the first blow in the morning, it was still dark outside. We know that. Why? Because it's December 7th. Because it's before they get to the methadone clinic, and we know that the check-in times there are 7:05 and 7:09. And you know how dark it is in December, just a couple of days away from the darkest day of the year, December 22nd. So when the defendant gets out of the car, goes in and gets his methadone, and then comes back, he finds Harmony has done it again. The smell of her inability to control her bladder and her bowels, something that she used to be able to do just fine for years. It's back again in his car again. The last place that he has, the only place that he has. And what does the man whom Kayla saw be so rageful?
That's what I'm talking about. There was nothing wrong with her before. And, you know, I'm going to put the commentary in here as we're watching this because, well, you could probably go watch it out on Court TV or wherever they have it. But I definitely want to comment on it and let you guys talk about it in chat as well. The only reason that she was having accidents in the car, it was simple, very simple, because she was scared and because she was in a freaking car and they probably didn't even let her use the bathroom when she needed to. So she learned to just go when she had to go and not say anything so she wouldn't get beat for that as well. So instead, she just took the beatings for going in her pants. And we know kids act out when something's wrong with them, when they're not happy, when they want to communicate it. So she just said, screw this, I'm going to go ahead and do it. We don't know why, but psychologically, kids do things like that. And we know that. We know when they're doing something like that, they're acting out for a reason. And nobody intervened on this poor little angel.
Do. And remember, that rageful wasn't just seen by Kayla, wasn't it? We heard from Rose Smith, the driver, years later, 2021. She told you that after giving Kayla a ride to the methadone clinic with Adam and coming back, that Kayla had bruises that day, terrible black eyes, and that she tried to give her phone to Kayla. And her words were that when he wrenched that phone out of her hands, he told her, "You are not giving that phone to my wife." And she described his face, how? A look of pure rage. What does that person do when they get back to the car after their methadone and Harmony has soiled herself again? All he has is his car and his rage and his fists. And Kayla described for you how that went on. For the length of time, that the same length of time that you took driving from the clinic here on Market Street up to the Burger King on Hooksett Road, you drove that drive. You know how long that is. And as the smell continued, she described that the hitting continued. And Harmony took blow after blow until she was moaning. And the defendant points to the fact and says, well, other people, they should have been able to see in the car. It's cold. It's dark. We know there's snow on the ground. Snow in New Hampshire means salt, which means the windows probably look the exact same that yours and mine did this morning. It's not easy visibility. Plus, think about it. Doesn't take a lot to be able to punch down on a 5-year-old, 35-pound child and make sure that it's below the knee.
I can't believe she was 35 pounds.
Not for Adam Montgomery. Not against Harmony. Not in that car. And you saw from the Walmart video and the video from Officer Stanzel, when they first approached the defendant, when he was trying to find where Harmony was, you saw from that how the defendant looked. Remember him at Walmart. He's not a small or a weak man. He wouldn't need to use much power to inflict deadly force upon Harmony's skull. And you heard it wasn't from one blow of his arm, but several. Take a moment. Let's take a break and talk about something that defense brought up. The fact that there were other children in the car, and why wouldn't they have been screaming and yelling? I remember that front catchphrase she tried to get Kayla to say, a cascade of chaos would have ensued. We know young children adapt to their environment like nobody's business. They're frightened by new faces. They're frightened by new experiences or the unexpected, but they're not frightened by something that's familiar. Why would the other children cry if Harmony had been getting hit and punished in the car? After all, this was the second time in less than 12 hours that they would have seen this if they were awake. They would not have been unfamiliar with his rage towards Harmony in that car. The defendant's theory that punishing Harmony for soiling herself would make the other children cry implies that this is unfamiliar to them. And the evidence shows that it is not. Kayla rejected that cascade of chaos every single time it was proposed to her. And both Kayla and common sense tell you that that makes sense, that that's true. Now, when they got to Burger King, the damage at that point had already been done. As Kayla told you, Harmony laid under the blanket. No one went to get help for her. Not the defendant who beat her, not for Kayla either. And what did the defendant say in that moment? Words matter. I think I heard her this time. This time. This time, I think I heard her. I think I did something. Why say this? Because he didn't do nothing. He did something. He took her life in rage over a bathroom accident. And he admitted in his opening that you can and should find him guilty of abusing her corpse and falsifying physical evidence for what he did afterwards to get rid of the evidence, get rid of her, get rid of the evidence that would have shown he murdered her. But it was the evidence of his crime of beating her. I fucked up. I think I did something. I think I hurt her this time. That's what he believed. You saw Kayla testify. You heard for 2 full days practically while she was on the stand, having to tell you what she saw having happened. And Kayla did nothing. She did nothing. She did not parent Harmony. She did not clean Harmony. She did not change Harmony when she soiled herself and the defendant told her to leave her in it. She didn't stop the defendant. She didn't try to get Harmony help. She didn't call 911. She didn't yell out. She didn't run out of the car. She didn't disobey the defendant. She's not seeking help. She's not seeking attention. He went through the trunk to get her, not her, because she did nothing. Later, she didn't betray him until after she even lied in grand jury and committed perjury for him. She didn't lift a finger. She did nothing. Nothing at all. The defendant wants to have their cake and eat it too when they come to describe her. She's an abuser, but she did something in the middle of the night. She didn't see anything here, but she saw it all. She wants the defendant. Oh, she doesn't want the defendant. Believe her grand jury testimony, but don't believe her grand jury testimony, the part where she said she lied. That part you should actually believe, even though she's telling you it's a lie. Want to have their cake and eat it too when it comes to her testimony. Well, you know, she would have been really conscientious when she was shopping for diapers. Because that's, if you're homeless, yeah, that would make sense. You want to go where you can get the cheapest price. She's a drug user. She's homeless. And for Harmony, she does nothing. They want to argue, well, she would have had this instinct to protect that child. Oh, but she did something to her in the middle of the night. She did nothing. We are tested, all of us, just a few moments in our lives to do the right thing, where our character as human beings is tested to do the right thing. And on this test, December 7th, with where Kayla Montgomery was back in that life, she failed. At grand jury, she failed. She still obeyed him. Even though he had run off to Maine with a second girlfriend since then, she still obeyed him. Katie Morin told you that back then, Kayla would have done anything for the defendant. That's what her protector did to her. He had her conditioned so well, physically and mentally, that she kept his secret, and she did nothing. You saw that in her testimony when she told you about doing nothing. And she told you about not stopping him from hitting Harmony. And she admitted unashamedly, without reservation, she didn't try to take Harmony to the bathrooms to clean her up. She didn't try to get her help. She did obey. She took Harmony's body to Portland Pie when he told her to later, sitting her between her two children in the stroller for that 15-minute walk down the street. But she did nothing. You don't have to like her to believe her. You don't have to like what she did. You may have very good reasons for hating her, but that doesn't
Nobody
change the
likes
fact that
her.
she saw the defendant beat Harmony to death. That doesn't.
Agreed. As much as everybody hates her, and I am not a fan of Kayla Montgomery, none of us would know what happened. None of us would have heard this awful information about going from bag to ceiling to the bank, the snow bank, to any of this stuff that happened, we wouldn't know if it wasn't for her. So I'm not giving any leeway on this case. She did nothing to help her. She did nothing she didn't change her. She didn't help her. She didn't get her out of the situation. She didn't call somebody and say, we don't want her. She did nothing. Agreed. But she did tell us what happened.
Change her credibility on telling us what the defendant did. Just because you believe that her failure to do the right thing is despicable, it doesn't mean that on this, she's not credible. She actually tried to humanize this guy. Remember her testimony? She cried. And she said to you and admitted she still cares about him. Her in prison, Harmony somewhere, only he knows. And she still cares about him. And she admits how she did nothing for Harmony. If she was singing for her supper, like the defendant suggested in their opening, she wouldn't have done that, would she? She'd have an answer for every question, an excuse for every moment that she did nothing. She didn't have that on the stand. She would never have admitted that she didn't take the kids to the bathroom or that she let Harmony sit in it that night. And yet she did. That's someone who's not making up a story to make herself look better, is it? She never would have admitted that when Harmony is covered by the blanket as they get their food from Burger King, that she unceremoniously dumped a breakfast sandwich on top of the blanket. Harmony can open that herself. After the defendant had covered her and smashed her face. And yet, that is what she told you happened.
That's
Kayla
harsh.
admitted to you that she did nothing. It's not the face of a person who's trying to make themselves out to be the saint and the defendant to be the devil. That's certainly not a master criminal schemer trying to exonerate her own behavior, as you just heard in closing arguments. She is not like the defendant. She's not admitting that what she can't deny and denying what she can't afford to admit, because if she did, she would have never admitted to her failure to act to protect Harmony. She would have never denied doing the small things. She would have claimed, oh, I did do those. I tried to redeem myself. And how she comes across, how she testifies. What she is a battered woman admitting an inconvenient and terrible truth, that she failed in a moment of life when her character was put to the test.
That part I do disagree with. I know she's a battered woman, but she sure could have done something to help Harmony in any way, as far as not going against Adam. She could have helped change her clothes. She could have fed her like she did the other kids. She clearly didn't like Harmony either. That's what I take from it. She didn't have feelings either way. She didn't, I don't think she did that. I don't think she hit her or spanked her or any of that, but she didn't like her. I don't think she wanted her with them. And I think she only had her with them because she wanted to please Adam and get the money that they got for them, even though they got money and they're still living in the car. I don't understand. I don't understand how much drugs they were consuming.
She did nothing to help Harmony, nothing to stop her. She didn't kill her. Only the defendant did that. So when defense counsel says that it was Kayla who put Harmony in a duffel bag in the trunk and told Adam about it later, you heard and saw Kayla testify. She did nothing for Harmony, not a thing. And you can't get something from nothing. And the defendant's promise at openings that you'd see she did something remains exactly now as it was then. And it's a false promise. You've seen that theory with evidence presented to test it, and it is still without support. It is still without corroboration, and it is still unreasonable to believe because it was the defendant who did something. When you consider Kayla's testimony, don't consider it alone. Consider it with all of the facts that go along with that testimony. Facts such as that she does have an agreement to tell the truth. Defense counsel questioned her and argued that, well, she had to give the police a lot more to get out of the additional lies that she said in grand jury. But remember, if she doesn't tell the truth, all of this comes back on her. It's back to square one for her. Her agreement is null and void. But the evidence that you saw, how thoroughly the police investigated this case, where Harmony is, location after location after location in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, 900 plus pieces of evidence to help find out what happened, has only corroborated Kayla about who killed Harmony, about when she died, who hit her, who mangled her body, and who dumped her where she is now, somewhere between here and the Tobin Bridge, Massachusetts. Corroboration, big fancy 5-syllable word that stands for evidence that supports that a statement is true. If you just had Kayla's testimony alone, with her truthful testimony on the elements of the crime charged, that would be enough for you to go ahead and find the defendant guilty of all the charges. But you don't just have her testimony. You have so much more, because every witness, 50 witnesses that came in and testified to you about and provided evidence, provides some corroboration for Kayla's account of what happened in ways that she never could have known. And that includes
50
testimony
witnesses.
and evidence that corroborates her on how Kayla died, how Harmony died, and why the defendant killed Harmony, why her body was desecrated, how Kayla was silenced for so long, and how the defendant discarded Harmony like trash so she wouldn't be found. Let's look at just one example. How do we know that Kayla's telling the truth when she told us how the defendant tried to induce or cause her to stick to his story, to not testify, to not tell people how he murdered and disposed of Harmony? How do we know that Kayla's telling the truth on that, tampering with her as a witness? It's because the evidence corroborates it. Nicole Giles told us that Kayla was still at the Fit on Lake Avenue, the Families in Transition shelter, when she saw bruises on Kayla's body. This is back in January of 2020, before Harmony was ever known to be missing. And Kayla is admitting to Miss Giles that the defendant is beating her. And she, what? She asked Miss Giles not to tell anyone. Having just been homeless, now living in a transition shelter with 2 younger children, and having been tested before and failed to get help for a child, she stays silent. She obeys and sticks with the defendant's story. Despite her abuse later, we see that as well from the testimony of Rose Smith, who was giving her that ride for methadone that morning, saw the beating that Kayla had taken the night before. And as she again saw pure rage in the defendant's face as he came and wrenched the phone out of Rose's hands, saying, "You're not going to give my wife that phone." So much so that when you heard and saw Rose testify, you heard her say, ever since then, she refused to drive them around anymore. That she carries pepper spray now. And she said, quote, "Something I will never forget." Kayla is under control and doesn't say what happens to Harmony out there. He believes that she's helping police. You heard testimony about how he believed the police were listening in on him and tracking him, and that he was ripping light fixtures down, that he was breaking thermostats and electronics. Kayla told you that he was paranoid that she was working with police and was being listened to. It's not a sign of mental illness. It's not a sign of being sad. It's a sign of guilty conscience. A sign that you want to continue to exert control, and you should think of it as such. That's corroborated by Dennis Cloutier. Remember the handyman at 644 Union Street? He saw the ripped down electronics, the broken thermostats, and he made the repairs. We also see more of that witness tampering from the testimony of Tara Hilbert next door on Orange Street, when Kayla finally does escape physically the clutches of the defendant, to the cycle of abuse that he had perpetrated for so long. The defendant didn't want to be found out. And since he silenced Kayla because he didn't want to be found out what he had done. And you know that from the very beginning. Don't forget the Facebook messages to Travis Beach. The U-Haul was still out there. What did he tell Travis? The day after, the next morning, when he's trying to find out, Travis is trying to find out where the van, because it's supposed to be back. What does he tell Travis right then? Please don't message me stuff like this on Facebook again. Just like getting rid of the body and destroying physical evidence, convincing witnesses to what you've done to stay silent. That's what murderers do. That's what this defendant did. They silenced them into staying silent. And the defendant did that for so very long. He made sure that it was his story that was being told. He continued to tell his story and different variations of it to everybody. His lie that he created. To Christina Lubin, remember, this would have been the first day after they got booted out of Anthony Badero's Audi. At Christina's place, tells her, I dropped her off in Massachusetts with her mother. Jessica Guerin tells her over a year later, while she's delivering a gift for her boyfriend, tells her at that time, oh, my other daughter, she's down in Massachusetts, and quickly changes the subject. Demetrios Saros, the former DCYF employee, tells her, nope, send her down to her mother in Massachusetts. Did that right around Thanksgiving. Courtney Garcia, who sees Harmony in the car on Thanksgiving Day and not there just a couple of weeks later. What's the defendant's story? What does the defendant, not Kayla, what does the defendant tell all of these people and tell Courtney Garcia? Dropped her off at my mother's. She was having bathroom problems. I'm sorry, dropped her off at her mother. She was having bathroom problems. Tells Rebecca Maines, dropped her off Their biological mother doesn't even let me see her. A clever lie that works if Kayla sticks to the story that he's told everyone. And he did for.
Hang in there, everybody. The people that are watching and listening to this, we're getting close to being done with it. This is great. We've got 3 hours and just about 15 minutes into this live. And again, I will timestamp it for you so you can watch certain parts that you want to. You'll know what parts are in there. And we're at the last of the closing arguments. He's doing a fantastic job. Oh my God, fantastic job of getting this to the jury and using visuals.
For a long time. That's why Kayla's in prison today. And corroborating evidence comes not only from the witnesses, but again, from evidence of receipts and from photographs, because a picture does speak 1,000 words. That is not the face of the person who's in control. It's the face of the person who was kept under control. She needed to be kept under control so that what the defendant did to his daughter would not be found out. And it worked for a long time. But all the witnesses who corroborate all testified to a different aspect of seeing the control that he exerted on Kayla and the stories that he told others to stop her from actually working for the police and to stop her from telling police what really happened. That's about what he does to her. But what else corroborates Kayla about why Harmony was killed? The defendant, again, not only about why, but telling Courtney Garcia and Rebecca Maines that why she is no longer with him, or one of the reasons at the time he gets rid of her, is because she's having bathroom accidents. So you know that that's the reason why he did what he did to her on the morning of December 7th. He's still mad about why this happened. He's still talking about it. Months with Rebecca Maines, years later. It's why he killed her, having accidents in the car. When Kayla said that the defendant hit her overnight and says words of, "You have to stop doing this," that's corroborated by what he told Courtney Garcia and Rebecca Maines, that he got rid of Harmony because she was having accidents. Rebecca Maines told us just yesterday, a friend of his, a close friend of his, that these accidents are what made him take Harmony away to, what did Rebecca testify? The defendant told her, a better place for Harmony, a better place. He told her that he thought Harmony was having these accidents on purpose. And Courtney Garcia especially recalled that the defendant said the accidents were happening while they were living in the car. So when the defendant says there's no evidence to support Kayla about what happened in the car, you know that's not true. Rebecca Maines could not have been clearer yesterday when she told you and clarified for both sets of counsel that the defendant told her he hated Harmony because Harmony reminded him of Harmony's mom. She could not have been clearer about that. Remember, if the defendant himself agrees with his displeasure and anger at Harmony when he got rid of her, and that was because of having accidents in the car, and when he says it to other people, that's not a coincidence. That's corroboration. Corroboration that he was angry at Harmony for the bathroom accidents. Evidence that even though this little 5-year-old girl that he thought was doing it on purpose, evidence of why he was so angry that morning.
She may have been doing it on purpose.
Kayla's account of when Harmony was killed and what the defendant did to her. Matt Gendron and Kim Frayne, both of them corroborate the time of when this occurred. Both of them corroborated because, hey, Kayla told you what happened when they were back, when the last night that they had their car going into the morning, the drive from the methadone clinic to Burger King in the morning of December 7th. And after that, they moved into Anthony Fadero's outing. And what do we have on that cold, dark winter night, December 8th, 2019? Just after midnight, we've got the defendant Facebook messaging away to Matt Gendron as he told you, hey, need help ASAP, please. Need a jump and jumper cables ASAP. I need a jump. My car died. We've been sleeping in our car and the battery, we've been sleeping in our car and the battery just died. My car died. My car, me. And we know what car he's staying in. It's Anthony Badero's blue Audi. We know that from the tow receipt because the car went and got towed by Aaron Sweeney earlier on the 7th. Matt didn't want to go out. Kim agreed to go out, got there with the jumper pack, and when she was there, no Harmony. The two boys get in the car. Harmony doesn't get in the car. More corroboration of when this happened. Separate from Kayla's testimony, separate from the corroboration that what she says is in fact the truth. What is unreasonable? Believed, what is not corroborated, What's not corroborated is the defendant's theory that something happened in the middle of the night while he wasn't there. There has been no evidence of that. I'm going to talk about Mr. Badero for a few more minutes. The defendant proclaimed in opening that the defendant wasn't around, that he wasn't around that night because he was doing his business to get them out of that car.
Bullshit.
He's unemployed. He got no business. What business have we seen or heard any testimony about?
Nothing.
He wasn't out working for Anthony Badero, making money and doing his business, because Anthony Badero showed us he's not the type of guy who's going to go ahead and hire the defendant to go out and work for him in the middle of the night. Tony Badero is not the type of guy who lets a homeless family stay in his car for more than 2 days. He was the type of guy who wanted that the family wanted to make sure didn't find out that they were living in Tony Badero's parking lot before their car broke down. And Tony Badero was definitely not the type of guy who was going to trust a homeless drug user who buys drugs from him to drive his car around at the middle of the night to help deliver drugs. Mr. Badero testified that he drove his car back then, despite not having a license. It's not reasonable for you to believe that he is going to have Adam Montgomery drive him around that night, either to deliver drugs or in exchange for drugs. In fact, remember, Mr. Badero admitted to you that when he met the defendant, it was in the late summer of 2019. When? The one time he told you that he had the defendant drive him. And what was he driving to? The courthouse on charges for Mr. Badero getting caught for driving without a license. When you go to the courthouse for charges of driving without a license, probably a good idea if you don't drive your own car. Probably a good idea to have somebody else drive, which is what Mr. Badero testified to, that was the one time he had the defendant drive his car. And that's back in the summer, long before the family's homeless, long before December 2019. If the defendant gets pulled over making drug deliveries in the middle of the night, as defense is suggesting you, Mr. Badero's got a lot bigger problems to worry about than driving around without a license. Employing the defendant as his driver is something that Mr. Badero denied, and as you can see from reason, is not something that Mr. Badero would have done. It's not rational. It's also not rational to believe that Mr. Badero would have entrusted the defendant to go out and deliver his drugs for him. From all of the testimony you've heard at that time, you can easily imagine that if Mr. Badero trusted the defendant to go deliver drugs for him, the drugs that got delivered were probably going to be a lot less than what Mr. Badero had promised his customers. Common sense tells you that is not true. Common sense tells you that the defendant has no place to be the night of the 6th and the 7th, except in his car with his family, with Harmony. He has no business, nowhere else to be. And why did Mr. Badero tell us all this? He also said that the defendant and Kayla, when he saw them, were always together. Always together. And that when he did go outside and see the kids, it was during the course of the relationship. Mr. Badero said those days, on the out days when they were in the Audi and he went outside, he did not see Harmony. Harmony was not there on the 8th. Harmony was not there on the 9th. And Kayla, as much as got jumbled a few minutes ago in closing arguments, Kayla was clear as well. It's one of the lies that she told you was a lie that the defendant doesn't want you to believe is a lie. She told you in grand jury that she lied and said that, oh, in grand jury, I told Anthony Badero, I know that Anthony Badero saw the kids and Harmony and waved to him every day. I said that in grand jury, and I lied in grand jury. But you just heard in closing arguments, the defendant doesn't want you to believe that that's a lie, even though she admitted that that's a lie. You want to have your cake, and you want to eat it too. That's what the defendant wants. What else is unreasonable to believe?
I like how he's disproving everything that they said on the stand. He literally did his homework. You can tell. He's got his notes. He's got his visuals up on the board. He did his homework before he did this closing argument, and he sat there one by one and telling the jury exactly what happened and what didn't happen based on how the defense is trying to discredit every single person. I think that was their only defense, was to discredit each individual person and try to catch them, impeach them. They didn't have anything else. There was really nothing else. If you watch the trial, every single person they try to discredit or impeach, that was it. There was no other defense. And this guy's just knocking them out.
Arguments that well, no one would have seen him stuffing her into the duffel bag when the car was pulled over on the intersection of Webster and Elm. Nobody, that could have happened, and for nobody to have seen it, that's impossible. It's easy to manipulate 35 pounds in a rear seat with a passenger when your back is to the sidewalk and the shrubs that you saw there on that section of the road, with a building with very few windows in that section of the road, when it's freezing cold and everyone around you is distracted by the woman who's waving other cars to go around. The physical evidence in the car and the physicality of manipulating Harmony's body show that this is yet another way in which the defendant's theory is unsupported, that his arguments that Harmony died from something other than his hands the morning of December 7th, that is unreasonable. It was he who punished her with his fists that day, and it was he who decided to destroy, alter, conceal, and remove her body from the sea ring to be sure it couldn't be used against him when somebody came asking, "Where is Harmony?" You may, when you're back in deliberations, be looking at the evidence in this case, different pieces of evidence that are there, photographs, diagrams, having a good understanding of where everything was, where it was found. And you may be asking yourself, why don't we have more forensic evidence here? First of all, the defendant is telling you that he falsified physical evidence. The other thing is that, as experts have told you time and time again, each one of the experts that got up here, time and elements can wear down DNA and fingerprints and blood. They were able to find DNA 106 trillion times
on the ceiling.
more likely from a female child of the defendant and
Agreed.
Sorey on this toothbrush.
They had plenty of evidence and enough DNA to convict him. Because, as we know, he's guilty.
Of the Sebring that the defendant had abandoned. But by being so good in hiding his crimes and in intimidating the one witness, the eyewitness to him beating Harmony to death, by wiping down and hiding and destroying evidence, he was sure that there was going to be less and less of it around. And yet still, from that toothbrush, from the ceiling, the truth prevailed. Sometimes evidence is not always where you expect to find it. We heard testimony about this cooler.
Absolutely.
This cooler, that the defendant kept Harmony's body. We
Crazy.
know that Harmony was in there in a bag. We also know from Christina Lubin that she used to put money in there. And she had put money in there recently for the defendant to be able to take to help provide for the family. So we know there should be fingerprints on the inside of that because their fingers definitely would have gone in to take the money. And yet the fingerprints are not there. We know that latent prints sometimes go away. And yet when Kayla Montgomery comes forward and tells you, here is what I know. She finally comes forward in June. She leads everybody. She leads police to the evidence that actually corroborates and in ways that she never could have known. She never would have known what was in the fit seal. She never would have known that police would have been able to find a sample, an example from CMC of the bag that the defendant had stuffed Harmony into. She told you she initially thought with police this was the bag.
Look at the size of that
Never
bag.
would have known afterwards
So
that Emily
small.
Thompson and Cameron Gibney both saw the bag in the Portland Pie cooler. She never would have known about what had happened and was found and was discussed in testimony about the Union Street bathroom, the ATM records, the Home Depot receipt, the Economistay Lodge, the rental records. She never would have known that when she came forward with this. In the ceiling. Not even my height. Kayla Montgomery is not climbing up there to be able to look and see that there's something still in that ceiling.
This corroborates her story. I love how they
Part
corroborate her
of all of
story.
those different things and what happened, you should also go ahead and consider what Kayla said afterwards about the forensic evidence that she could not have known would have corroborated her. You heard about the bag of lime. It's not the fanciest looking bag of lime up there, is it? But that's the one that she identified. So let's talk about that for a moment. It's the bag of lime that has the same SKU that had been purchased the day of February 26th. That an 11:20 ATM withdrawal happened at the Citizens Bank, South Willow Street, and 20 minutes later, across the street at the Home Depot, that's when there's a purchase of that bag of lime. That SKU number specifically was found, as was testified to by the gentleman from Home Depot. A purchase of lime by a person who doesn't own a lawn and has nothing to fertilize in the middle of winter. The common sense tells us maybe the defendant really wanted to get some lye, L-Y-E, like you would find in Drano, breaks down organic material, rather than lime to make your soil, doesn't lower the pH, it raises it, makes it less acidic. but the lime purchased at Home Depot 20 minutes after the ATM transaction. And what was it purchased with? A grinder, a blade, that purchase, and a battery, excuse me. That's not a coincidence.
No, it was Adam.
Again, that's corroboration. Corroboration that when the defendant talked about how he wanted to get rid of Harmony's body, when they got their tax refunds in their account, that's what he did. So when she told you, we heard about this a moment ago in cross-examination, when she told you that she had seen this grinder new in a box at some point, believing that she had seen it at her mother's house earlier on, when the defendant said that was the kind of saw he wanted to use to get rid of Harmony's body. And then when you heard that Christina Lupin doesn't own this kind of saw, it's a grinder. She does woodworking. This is not a woodworking tool. It's for grinding metal. You have to ask yourself, where is it that Kayla saw this grinder new in a box? Where was it? Again, not the lie of a master schemer, is it? Why would she concoct that out of thin air, as the defendant's arguing? Why say that that's the grinder or saw that he discussed when she knows and testified to you already that there's a corded saw in a box underneath the sink? If this was untrue, if she had not seen this grinder at some point new and in a box, if she was singing for her supper, she would have instantly just said, oh, yeah, it's the saw that we have down there. Saw the whole thing. That's what happened. Yeah, detectives, that's the saw. But she didn't do that. She identified the grinder. She said she saw it new. She remembers it because that's what the defendant talked about wanting to use on Harmony. If she didn't see it at Christina Lubin's house, and the only other place you can reasonably conclude is that she saw it at Union Street, along with the bag of lime, and she doesn't remember it clearly. That's the only other reasonable, logical conclusion to make. It's not a coincidence that from their account, the money gets taken out and 20 minutes later, this happens. It's corroboration. And the next day, Dennis Cloutier is over at the house. The next day, trying to snake the drain, as asked by the defendant. And who did he say is pacing behind him while he is trying to snake the drain? The drain and the drain cover that's already been off. Is it? Oh, no, it's not Kayla. It's the defendant, he said. Just the defendant who is pacing behind him. More evidence that Kayla would never have known corroborates what happened. More and more and more. She could never have known that there would be easy pass toll records of the same rental vehicle going back and forth, as Trooper Hernandez told us, through the Tobin Bridge on the night that he left to get rid of the body with the U-Haul. She could never have known when she told police what happened, that those records were there, and that lo and behold, the odometer perfectly matched.
All right, Joe, we're about 15 minutes out, and this is great. We can see that this case is just wrapped up in this closing argument, and he didn't go too far as time goes. He's doing these PowerPoint presentations. He's showing all the evidence so that you don't need notes. He's showing you everything going lie by lie. You're right. And just either smashing it or telling you that it's the truth. This is one of the best closing arguments that I've seen in a long time. That's not 3 hours long that you can't remember.
Common sense tells you that. She didn't know that. She didn't know that the corroboration existed. Because it's not reasonable to think that Kayla would tell and enable police to find other evidence that she did something. If she was the one who had killed Harmony, like the defendant wants you to believe, she would never have done any of this. The theory does not fit. And I want to jump to another reason why this theory does not fit. He's shown us that he's not the type of person that would have allowed this to happen under his theory. He's argued to you that he's a caring parent, despite what we've seen from the rest of the evidence. But his theory is, in fact, this, that they had planned for hours what to do with the body, and that the plan was to carry her around for months and store her in different places, and then finally do something eventually whenever we get enough money for a grinder. It doesn't make sense. His theory is also that he was such a caring parent that he came home in the middle of the night from taking care of business to discover that his 5-year-old that he fought to get custody of is dead while left in Kayla's care. And he just takes it. He doesn't react. He doesn't rage. His theory is that he doesn't hit Kayla or yell or scream so others can hear, is that he just sits in the car for the rest of the day and night and takes it. Goes to the methadone clinic at 7:04 like it's nothing in the morning and takes it. That's his theory. That's not him. That's not who we've seen. that he would show indifference towards Harmony's death, that he bags, carts, stores, stuffs, frees, thaws, squishes, consolidates his child. He does all of that, then leaves Kayla for another woman, leaves her with this woman that he's arguing to now, killed one of his children, leaves the other kids with her, and then takes off to Maine, goes on to live his life. That's not him. That's not him. That's not what we've heard. He doesn't do nothing. He would not have been the passenger in this situation. He's the driver. What the defendant suggests his reaction was would not have been his reaction if Harmony just died in the middle of the night from something.
Agreed.
He came back to find her in a duffel bag in the trunk.
No way.
So we know that theory that depends on you believing that that type of person does not work. It is a fantasy.
It's a
It is
wrong
beyond belief. It
fucking
is a
fantasy.
bizarro world that the defendant would have you believe in light of discovering that his offspring is dead, that he does
No
nothing,
way.
and that it's Kayla who's always doing the something. That's
He
not
controlled
reasonable.
Kayla,
That is not
100%.
supported by the evidence. Not with the defendant's lies to others. Not with the actions that we've seen him take towards Kayla. Not with the evidence that he left on Kayla's face and arms and back. And he lied to others too. He lied to others.
Absolutely. He
He's
lied
the
when
one
it was
that's getting rid
convenient.
of the phone. He's got his new girlfriend, Kelsey Small, to get rid of the phone. You
Yes,
saw
he
from the other
does.
video there, he doesn't put himself in front of the camera. In fact, you probably saw when he first walked in, he had half a hand over his face. The video's there. You can look at it if you'd like when we go back to the deliberations.
I hope he doesn't
He
get
lied to
girls
the tow truck driver about
writing
his
him
address.
in prison.
He had to abandon the car. It was the crime scene. He told the tow truck driver, I live at 77 Guilford Street. You know, he doesn't live at 77 Guilford Street. He told the tow truck driver, I got no phone. We know he has a phone. He used it that night to Facebook message Matt Gendron to try to get a jump for the dead car. He lies to get rid of things. He tries to continue to hide. He tells Travis Beach, don't send me this stuff on Facebook. He certainly does have a cell phone during that time. He wants to get his car away from him as fast as possible. What better way to abandon it? Just tell the tow truck driver you don't have the phone and don't worry about it. Let him get rid of the evidence because he's telling you now that he's guilty of getting rid of evidence. The defendant admitted only to what he had to, which to you or I would be unspeakable acts to do to any human being, let alone a small child, let alone your own flesh and blood. He says in his arguments you should find him guilty of altering, destroying, concealing, and removing Harmony's body. And he admits this. Why? Because he thinks you're going to be fooled. His counsel questioned Kayla with a legal principle, and I'm sure you remember it. He was asking Kayla about her petty theft from Dunkin' Donuts. Well, you took some responsibility of it. You took the lesser way out of the problem, so you wouldn't get a more serious charge. That's what he thinks that you're going to let him do. He thinks if you'll let him slide on the murder, if he admits to what happened afterwards, because he knows the evidence of that is overwhelming, that you'll let it go on the other two. And he admits what he can't deny. He denies what he can't afford to admit. And the only part of Harmony that we have left will be sitting in that deliberation room with you on that pink toothbrush and outside here in this part of the ceiling wall that's there. And the other parts of her body, her rest of her torso, her face, her eyes, that smile, only the defendant, as we all sit and stand here today, knows where they are. And he can't afford to admit to you that he knows where they are because the evidence contained on them will show that he caused her death. So she won't get the burial that everyone deserves. She doesn't get a headstone in the ground above the head that he battered. She doesn't get to be at peace in death because of what he did, because he can't afford to tell anyone where she is. She doesn't get dignity. She doesn't get peace because this man did nothing. He didn't do nothing. He did something called murder. And because he says trying to find her is a waste of time, that trying to find her is a waste of taxpayer money. That's what he thinks of her. That's what he thinks of what he did. That's what he thinks of you now. Efforts to find where he put her and what he did to her and why he killed her, they're a waste of time to him. His words, you heard them. To find the child that he murdered and the evidence that he hid. He believes Harmony's life and death are a waste of time and that they weren't anything to him and that he dumped her like trash. This is what you've seen in the evidence. This is what you've heard the defendant say when you consider whether he has an extreme indifference to the value of Harmony's life when he killed her. He had no value for her life when he killed her. He took an innocent life, a child, for no reason other than his rage and his indifference
You could tell he's starting to wrap it up here and he's getting really heated. This is genuine rage coming from this prosecutor. I was going to say the prosecution, but the prosecutor, he's genuinely heated and he genuinely wants the jury to know that you must convict Adam Montgomery for the things that he did and he did alone. None of it would make sense otherwise. None of it would make sense to convict him only for abuse of a corpse or any other thing that he pled guilty to. Only thing that makes sense is to convict him of all crimes, one being murder. And it did become murder in the second degree that he got guilty. He got the guilty verdict for. So let's finish the rest of this and then we will be out. It's been a long, really good live. Wow.
And his ignorance and his lack of humanity. Because this trial is about Harmony Montgomery. And you sat here and you were so attentive to every moment, every terrible fact. You watched the eyes and the voices of every witness. And you know it's not about quantity, it's about quality. How they testified, how they looked at you when they answered questions on cross and direct. That was not a waste of time. Only Harmony's killer would say that finding her is a waste of time. That's bearing witness is what you have done to the truth. And that's a front row seat on what this man perpetrated on Harmony and her body and the truth from being shown to you, who cowardly runs off to Maine to distance himself from the scene of his crimes, who runs with Demetrios, comes to the house and could see that bruise on her face. And even then, a week later, Demetrios still saw marks of her after the defender had bashed her all around the house. The man who complains about tracking down leads in Arizona as a waste of effort to prove something. Yes, that's what people do. That's what this community, this state, this nation, this society do. We go to find and protect life. Every one of us, whether you wear a badge or you don't, you seek to protect children, to put the next generation above your own. That's what a father does. That's not what the defendant wanted, because he is not Harmony's father. He has forfeited that right to even claim that title or call himself her father. She was never a daughter to him. Not in July, not in December, not in that phone call, not from the moment of her death continuing up through this very day when he knows where she is. He killed somebody he didn't see as a daughter. He never saw her as a blessing. He beat down something he saw as a nuisance, that he saw as an inconvenience. His behavior to the bathroom accidents shows you that in that moment when he killed her, she wasn't a person.
May 9th, y'all.
She was an object.
Sentencing is May 9th.
Thing.
I'll put it at the bottom here.
Mad at this thing that ruined his car. And he hit and he hit and he hit this thing to make it stop doing what he didn't want it to do, to teach it a lesson. Until he said to Kayla, I think I hurt her this time. I think I did something. And he might as well have said, I think I broke it. And that's what he did to her. Afterwards, only proves that his actions don't believe that he murdered his daughter. He broke one of his things. And like any broken thing that somebody never really loved, they throw it away. And that's what he did. He may have genetically donated half of his DNA to her, but he was not her father. She was an object that he beat, stuffed, threw, and shelved in a walk-in cooler. Cameron Gibney told you she was down next to the mustard. She was an object made even tinier from her 35 pounds when she was alive by defrosting and consolidating her down that he took to a hotel, and he drove through some tolls, and he threw it away. And he knows where she is right now, but he believes it's a waste of time and taxpayer money to try to find her. So don't you ever think that this man murdered his own daughter. Rebecca Maines told you he hated Harmony because she reminded him of her mother. Defense counsel told you to go ahead and put emotion aside and look at the facts. Look at the facts. Look at the facts and call him a killer. Put emotion aside, look at the facts, and then you can call him a tyrant And you can call him rageful. Call him rageful. Those descriptions suggested to you, maybe evil. But don't call him a father. It's time now for you to hear the court's final instructions, to then go back into that room and deliberate all the evidence that you've seen, and to hold the defendant responsible for everything he did in July of 2019, in December of 2019, and afterwards. You promised both parties in the court during jury selection that when proof had been shown beyond a reasonable doubt of all of the elements of the crimes, that you could and would hold the defendant responsible. And now, not all doubt, but all reasonable doubt. And that proof has been shown. You promised us during jury selection that you did that, and you would do that, and you saw Kayla testify. From that alone, you've got sufficient evidence to convict him of every charge, but you don't have to take our word for it, because we've just talked about, and you've seen for 2 weeks, all of the evidence that corroborates and gives you what you need to find him guilty on each and every single one of these charges. We saw in this courtroom that Kayla is not lying about who hit Harmony. And there is no doubt about how Harmony was hurt in July, who killed her in December, what was done to her body and who did it, who falsified physical evidence, and how the defendant kept Kayla quiet. He's guilty of second-degree murder for recklessly causing Harmony's death with extreme indifference to the value of life, because you've seen beyond even that standard, he had complete indifference to the value of her life. Kayla did nothing. He did a lot of things. He did something, he said. It's called murder. It's called assault. And he's guilty of every single one of those charges in front of you. And so I ask you to hold him responsible for that truth and what you've seen in the facts, what you've seen, what you've tested, and what you've heard has been proven. Find him accountable and find him guilty on every single one of these charges. And I thank you so much for your time today.
Guess what, y'all? We made it. We made it. Guilty, 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 guilty. All right. So as you know, as everybody knows, he was found guilty on Friday, guilty on all counts, guilty of second-degree murder, and the other two charges. I know one's abuse of a corpse. I'm not sure exactly the other one right offhand because I don't have it in front of me, but he was found guilty, and I wanted to show everybody here why that was and how amazing the prosecution was the entire time. So we're at 3 hours and 47 minutes. This was an amazing live. Every one of you is amazing. Thank you so much. You can see my dogs. They finally went to sleep in the background. If you look right there behind me, somewhere right there behind me, there's two of them asleep. The other one's on the couch. They all fell asleep listening to me. Thankfully, you all didn't. Justice for Harmony has been served. Now for the sentencing. So May 9th, I will be back to bring the sentencing, and then maybe we can talk about it. We can have a little discussion. I don't know how long sentencing will last, but there will be victim impact statements, and let's all pray that they make Adam come. I'm pretty sure they will. There's like a 95% chance that he'll be there unless somebody beats him up real bad or he has some shit excuse. But other than that, I think he's going to be there. We're going to listen to victim impact statements. We're going to listen to sentencing, and we're going to talk about it. So thank you all. It's time for me to go. You have a good night, and thank you. Please like, subscribe, share, all the things, and let's get this channel popping even more than it is. I won't forget all the day oneers. All right? Have a good night. Happy Saturday. Thank you.